There we go. Welcome to the Barbell Strikes Back. I'm James McDermott, and today Caleb Nelson is returning to the show. Caleb was a guest all the way back on episode 22, which was like a couple of years ago now. It's kind of crazy. Caleb, how you doing?
Like I was just saying before we hopped on here, I'm just so hyped to hang. This is great, man. Like the Caleb strikes back. He's back. He was back on the barbell strikes back. Let's go.
There we go. There we go. Caleb strikes back. Wow. That was powerful. You should put that on a t-shirt or something. Caleb strikes back.
Dude, whew, that would get rebellious, but I do have a bit of rebellious streak in me, so be very par for the course.
Do you now like see I when I think of Caleb Nelson, I think of, you're not quiet, but you're outgoing. You're not introverted, but you're extroverted. There's different dimensions, and I wouldn't think rebellious, but explain this rebellious streak. Like, are you getting an extra bowl of ice cream after dinner? Like, what kind of rebelliousness are we talking about?
I mean, you struck the most perfect chord. I love my ice cream. If anybody out there is listening right now, I bought Sunday as in ice cream sunday.com because at some point I want to have an ice cream brand. I love ice cream so much.
Wait, are you
Probably
serious? Hold on. You own icecreamsunday.com?
own nakedsunday.com
Oh,
as in like naked ice cream sunday, not like naked sunday the day I own naked sunday studios.com. But yeah, that's part. I saw that one day. I was like, I didn't even know that was a thing. I was talking to somebody in the UK. Apparently, that's a thing, a naked Sunday where there's no whatever on it. So I was like, that's on brand. I love ice cream. Naked Sunday, this fits.
yeah.
Uh, I think that is one way of like looking at it. Like, I do like to have my success and have my dessert too. But we talked about this before. I grew up in a cult, so like rebelling against restriction and control tends to be something that's with it. I don't like being told what to do. That being said, I appreciate accountability. So I've found that man, you did a great job of being like, I'm not introverted, but I do have introverted sides. There's just this like inside and outside. And if anything, I've kind of looked at my life of late as a journey to learn how to navigate the duality of myself. I have both sides. One side tends to lean heavier than the other. So how do I bring that other side of me? Some people call it the shadow self. How do I bring that shadow self of myself out into the forefront and integrate all of me, be more authentic as a whole? So whether it's from even just this kind of concept of spiritual fitness, most people think just the body and exercise and food and nutrition, but to me it's more about the relationship you build with yourself, and then not only that, where it goes into the rest of your life, how you talk to your family, how do you work within your business, all those things. It's never just that one thing. It's this kind of esoteric thing that you can't always put your finger on. So that's how I see the duality of me and the rebellious side of me. I'll get to a certain point of where that those boundaries, I like to push the boundaries, and then I like to dissolve the boundaries.
How
um,
do you I have a whole thing of things that I want to bring up. First, all right, first let's start off with it's interesting that you say that you don't like being told what to do, and that's par for the course for anyone in our field in coaching and CrossFit. CrossFit is filled with so many people who don't like being told what to do, but who specialize in telling people what to do. So it's kind of funny to think about it that way. With let's rewind for the cult. I'm sure we went over it back on episode 22, but just
yeah.
remind everybody your background and where you came from with the cult, and how that ties into your life now.
Yeah, great question. So I grew up in some people call it a cult, some people call it a religion. I just call it a life lesson realistically now. I know when I say the word cult, most people turn their head. But I grew up in something called the Moonies, otherwise known, more formally known as the Unification Church. They were really known 70s, 80s for their mass weddings. So, for example, my parents, they're in the Guinness Book of World Records, largest mass wedding, married in Madison Square Garden alongside few thousand other people all at the same time.
Wow. So everybody says their vows at the same time, and everyone kisses at the same. Like, how does that work with a mass wedding?
Basically, I mean, I have never gone into the nitty gritty of that. I'm just aware of it, of how like, hey, they were at this thing. The other side of it was my parents also had an arranged marriage, as in like the dude said, "Hey, you and you like go talk, like that's going to happen." And I was also destined to have an arranged marriage. Go figure, that rebellious side of me, especially when I got into my teen years and I was getting closer to like that time when they would have what they call matching ceremonies. I think things have evolved a little bit since then, but that was probably my first example of very restrictive, the bigger like the that was the one thing where I couldn't like fit the mold no matter what I was going to do. I was going to go a different path.
Is it
um
just that one aspect of your life that the church was very controlling on, or was it other things?
I mean, in general, my mother tended to be very restrictive, very controlling. And I say all this with all the love in the world. Like, I have a great relationship with my parents. Much of my journey the past 4 years has been learning how to go back and make amends and make peace with the past. I'm very grateful for all of my life. In fact, I wouldn't have it any other way. Um, she was just very protective, overbearing in many ways, and a lot of moms can be a little overbearing. She was just always worried, as she loved, but she didn't know how to let me go and kind of experience things for myself.
As long as your
So
parents are around, you never stop being someone's baby. Even if you don't think about yourself as, I'm not a baby anymore, mom, but you are their baby.
that's a great point. And there was an interesting shift though the past few years. I actually coached my mom to lose about 40 pounds. She was overweight her entire life. Um,
That's
and
awesome.
yeah, it was really powerful. The deeper driver for me in that experience, though, was nothing. Yes, I wanted her to get healthier. I wanted her to feel better. But I knew at that point in my life, for where I needed to go understand her. Where did she come from? I needed to make peace with that because she, to me, was the more obvious representation of control. And what I needed to discover in myself was also learning how to have empathy for somebody else in their own life. And that took me on a very interesting journey of learning how to more deeply understand my mother from the things that I use this example all the time. Like, I remember the first time she told me about how she approaches a meal, and it sounded like she was going to war every single time. And that told me so much about the guilt, the expectations, all the other things that were invisible deep down, buried deep down, that was actually affecting her ability to make routine, healthy decisions. It had
Do you
nothing to do
mean
with the food.
do you mean it's a
But
battle in approaching a meal in a sense of like, I know I shouldn't eat that, but I can't resist the urge? Can you explain what she said to you?
yeah, so you did a great job of kind of describing that. She's like, I know what to eat, but the stress of the day, the classic words of I should, I have to, right, wrong, good, bad, especially when she was tired after a day of work. And then she was worried about all of her kids still, no matter what. Like, we're always still her babies, as you just mentioned. But also, my dad has gone through health stuff. There's just all these new evolutions of what was going on. And on top of that, this was during the pandemic times where everything was scary for a lot of people. So for her to evolve into that, she would show up at the, especially at night, it was dinner usually. It's like I would get there, I feel all this pressure, I've worked so hard, I've committed so hard throughout the day, and then I get to this, but I'm so drained, I'm so burnt out from my day, I can't will myself through this moment anymore. I feel the guilt of the day. I feel like I failed on certain things. I feel the pressures. I'm supposed to be this kind of mom. I'm supposed to be this kind of mother. I'm supposed to be this kind of wife. I'm supposed to be this kind of role in my job. I'm supposed to be all these things. And at this point in her life, she's also dealing with, well, my kids are all grown up. Where are they going with their lives? I have literally no control over what they do. So that felt disempowering. So those kind of internal conversations would show up, and then she would get to the dinner plate, and she's like, "What am I like? Why should I care? Why does this matter? Like, I need to feel good." So she would lean on things that were not necessarily great for her. Or she would eat too fast. She wouldn't be mindful of the experience in front of her.
And you can kind of
So
in a situation like that replace other things with food. Like you and your
yeah,
siblings are out of the house, so there's no social outlet there, and also like a relinquishing or a losing of control. Well, now I can control what's on the plate, and I'm going to do what I want because I'm going to have these things that maybe aren't great for my health, but it's going to fill that void that's that's there because of what I've lost, or not even lost, like perceived loss.
Perfect. I could not have described it better. It's filling that void, just like you said, and using food. She doesn't drink, mind you, like, but she used food as a numbing agent so that, well, that's what I notice. A lot of people, whether it's sex, drugs, alcohol, food, intense exercise, workaholism, whatever, name your ism, a lot of people will use their thing to numb out on the thing they don't actually need to focus on.
Video
That's
games,
what the
literally
video
going
game.
into an literally like just I'm gonna spend 10 hours in another world. You know, you have a family and a
Dissociate.
house and a horse in a game, and in life you're not taking care of yourself at all.
I never thought about that. Like what do they have? Like The Sims or whatever. Like you build a surrogate life.
Yeah.
You see these crazy things on like
Yeah, I've done it
Generation 3 where it's
before.
like,
It was the Elder Scrolls game, Skyrim. And all of a
yeah,
sudden I could buy a house. And in real life, I have no intention on ever buying a house. I like renting because I like the freedom that's attached with if I ever wanted to break that lease, even if I have to pay a little more, I could go anywhere I want. Even though I haven't in many years, I still like the option there versus being tethered down by a brick and mortar house. I'm sure that will probably change as I get older. But then all of a sudden, I have five houses in this game. I have a horse at each one. I have three wives. It's a whole. I'm hoarding treasures. It's like a whole. Even though in my actual life, I try to do away with hoarding. I try to
yeah,
like get rid of things as soon as possible. I frequently go through clothing and everything and take it to the thrift store. But in the game, this is like I'm actually putting in all of my things in the game. I'm like I'm gonna hold on to every little item I find and have it neatly organized in all these fake houses. And I haven't been there in actually a few years, but I'm sure it's doing well, on the digital world.
wow, dude, you're bringing up something so powerful. You hear those crazy stories of like how does somebody build a surrogate family, a second family somewhere else in the world? It's because more often than not, they feel like a failure in one, and they're using this thing. We'll use video games right now. Like in a video game, reset, start all over. There's no real consequences, but you got a mortgage, you got kids. Like you can't just push reset on that life. Yeah, people do what's it called? They can declare bankruptcy, but like the pain, the stuff, it goes with you. But that's why you can see those quote unquote simulations become so popular because there's really no consequence for failure. And you can get a sense of victory. You can get a sense of a quick hit of dopamine. You're like, I did a good job at something today. And you feel busy. You feel like you were productive, but it doesn't mean there was productivity there. And it's
Yeah.
interesting. You said you walked away from it because I think because these things are so easily available to us now, it's so easy to get lost in them. And you forget, like, all of a sudden one day, whether it's, man, I'm 20 pounds heavier than I thought I was, or my marriage is dissolving, or my business is not where I want it to be. Those things just pop out of nowhere. You're like, how did that time go so fast? Because you were so focused on this other thing as opposed to paying that little bit of attention to that thing that was really uncomfortable in those other areas in your life, which ultimately are like we have to go inward and discover that
Yeah.
deeper conversation with ourselves. So
Well, and then you could,
yeah,
if you're so focused, let's say if you're focused on a game, we'll keep it on video games.
yeah,
And like let's say for you as example, you start to get into video gaming and you don't realize that you're not giving Lexi as much attention as you should be in your relationship and your marriage. And maybe when she starts to press you on that, you start to get defensive and you start to get, annoyed. Well, I work all day. I just want like 4 hours, or however much it is to play this game. And then I'll talk to you and then I'll take out the garbage and stuff like that. And then her even asking you to do things may not be because she wants that thing done. She just wants the interaction with you. And you don't notice it. And the next thing you don't know is that her bags are at the door and she's like, bye. And you're just still focused on this thing and you don't realize it until it's all over. And that I just explained it very, very quickly and with not a lot of details, but that happens in a lot of our lives and a lot of things over the course of time. And every day blurs together. Every day goes so fast. I say it all the time at the gym. It's Thursday already. Like, what happened to the rest of the week? Like, the weeks, they seem to fly by. And before you know it, they can fly by in a good way or a really negative way.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up. I'll share this story. A few years back when I had purebred the second gym, um, there was actually a moment with Lex. We were like, actually, the revelation came at work. We were low in sales. We needed to go on a big sales push, and I was doing all the stuff. I use For me, it was often my job where that was my escape. I would just not come home. I would be so plugged into that. To this day, I still have to be very aware of it. I was doing all the things, making the calls, the texts, the messages, the outbound stuff, the connections, all that stuff, asking for referrals, all the things. And I not only was things not like getting better, they were getting worse. And it dawned upon me all the things that I have ever talked to clients about, especially at that time, this is probably 6 years ago. I realized we were very distant at home. And I was like, well, I've told all these other people, like, you kind of have to go focus on the other thing. Not kind of, you do. I looked at myself in the mirror, like, man, I got to go solve this. I went home and I cleared the deck with her. What did she need? She wasn't feeling loved, connected, whatever it was, much like you were saying before. When we got aligned, when we felt connected, well, I felt loved by her. What she needed from me was very different from what I thought it was. And I started to deliver on that because the most important relationship in my life, aside from the one with myself, is with my wife. And I see often that like my relationship with myself is mirrored in how successful my relationship with my wife is. So those are good indicators. The funny thing is, man, I went once I squared that up with her and said, hey, what do you need from me? And then also, what do I need to feel loved, appreciated, valued? I showed up to work the next day feeling good, feeling light, feeling open. And I didn't realize like been putting up these walls as opposed to being open and fluid and much like you were talking about, like outgoing, whatever. Let's be casual. Let's have fun. All of a sudden, money changed. It was just a different energy that was showing up in all those arenas. But I was trying to solve the problem. I thought what she wanted for success, at least in my wife's eyes, was successful business. We need to be good there, as opposed to success was us feeling like for her, it's often like I need a 15-minute cuddle. Like that's it seems kind of ridiculous, but I could do that. I can show up and be that even on my worst day. So
You
that
just
was a
gotta
very
just gotta lay there.
I just got to lay there and feel present and ask her one question and not tell her what to do. Just basically listen to what she has to say. Still struggle with that to this day. So I'm not saying like I've figured it all out, but I remind myself when those things are happening. It's just like you're saying, like everybody has their version of escapism, whether it's I have to go make more money and work more or eat more or this and that. I think that that's what you brought to the table there was a really important investigation of the human psyche and more the important like how do we build meaningful relationships. It comes from going and facing the thing that we might be afraid of. I was afraid to talk to my wife and saying I feel like a failure right now,
Yeah.
and then her saying that's not what I care about. Oh, that's not what you care about. Yes, she wants to make sure the bills are being paid, all that stuff. It was i want you to I want you to deliver on what's important to me, which leads into a discussion around things like love languages and whatnot. Oh, she made it easy for me to feel victory in the most important thing in my life. People say like, "Oh, I'm building this business for my family and my kids," and it's like, or like family and kids that are standing right in front of you right now, probably just want you to like sit there and have a conversation with them, give them a hug, play a board game with them, feel like you actually care and are invested in their future.
Well, like
That's a
the
lot.
things that I think sometimes we project what we think the other person thinks is important, you know. We'll stick with you as an example. You
Yeah.
know, you do the grocery shopping, you paid the bills, you took the dog out, you got her a bowl of ice cream, you did the laundry, all these things, and then you get some maybe what you perceive as negative feedback from her, and you're like, look, I do all this stuff, I'm doing all this stuff for us, right? And but the one thing that maybe you're not doing is communicating and finding out what is actually important, which is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Maybe if you didn't take out the garbage and do all those things, if you slacked there but you did the cuddle time because you knew that's what the number one priority thing is, all that other stuff doesn't matter. That just gets taken care of over time. It has to happen at some point because you need clothes, you need dishes, it just gets done. But you don't have to kill yourself with that stuff and put a chip on your shoulder that you're going to blame your partner for when they didn't even care about that stuff. And you see it in movies all the time where they'll use this exact example in an argument, and then one of them will inevitably say, I don't even care about all that other stuff. I care that you're not, you're not talking to me.
Dude, it's crazy, but it's the argument about the clothes on the floor is not the argument about the clothes on the floor. That kind of
Yes.
idea.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you're saying. But it's so what I think what's more fascinating about this is our fear of telling our loved ones what is most important to us. I think the underlying thing and what I've observed throughout all this time is people feel guilty for receiving the exact love that they need and communicating that. It might be to a friend who you're coaching or whatever, like, hey, I need you to pay me. And this can't just be just I give you stuff. It might be direct as that, or it might be the cuddle time, or it might be like my wife's thing is she does all like cleanliness around the house is a big thing for her. So I clean the house thoroughly at least once a week so she can come home. It's whatever that is. The hard part about saying that's the one thing I care about as well, and you can't go stacking 95 other things because that's what most people will. They'll say, I just want that. I just want this. The second I hear, I just want, telltale sign. Just is like another 4-letter word in my vocabulary because it's never that. More often than not, when they start with that, they feel that person you're listening to is actually still too insecure to say the thing they really care about. And it's usually harbored under years of guilt and shame. Maybe the last time they really were vulnerable and asked for the thing they want, they got shut down, they got rejected, they got whatever, and they felt like I was nothing. So it's just weird that the psychology around learning how to be clear about what you want for yourself is the answer, but you have to be courageous enough to also communicate that at the same time and then make space for somebody else to communicate that, which is then the
Yeah.
second part is what if we don't want the same things?
Well,
Okay,
like
how do we
another
handle
example would be, a different type of relationship would
it? Yeah.
be you have an employer and you feel you earned a raise or you just need a raise, your bills are going up, and no one wants to have that conversation with their employer. And the employer doesn't want to have it either, for a multitude of reasons. And sometimes you can let that go for too long. But then your needs aren't being met and you're not at least giving the other person a chance either. Like you might get a no, but you should at least give them a chance to say no instead of maybe harboring, negative thoughts towards them. I'm like, I'm not even going to bother because Phil's not going to give me a raise. I'm doing all this extra paperwork. We lost Steve, and now I have to take over his projects, and which that it seems like that would be something that would warrant some sort of a extra compensation. But you have to be willing to have the conversation in the first place.
Dude, I love what you brought up there. I think that might be one of the most common things out there, especially in the professional world. People blame their employer for, like, more often than not, the person who's the boss, person at the top, the leader, doesn't know what's going on. Well, nobody can read their minds. Nobody.
Yeah.
That being said, a leader should put a great leader put systems in place to hold space for, hey Joe, how you doing, man? What's coming up in your life? How's the family? What's the like you really start to become a
Checking
life
in. You
coach.
got to check in.
You got to check in. Same thing as coaching in general. Hey, this is the accountability. Make space for this person to open up, share the things. If you're not solid as a leader, you're not going to have those checkpoints because you also want to keep it kind of vague to be like, I don't know. Well, guess what? Your business is going to go get a little frazzled
Yeah.
at certain points
And you can't
because
take offense either. Like if you ask your boss for a 10% raise and they're like, hey, I can't give that to you right now, but you know what? I can give you 6% right now. And then we can reevaluate in another quarter to see how we're doing. All right, let's play a game.
yeah.
Uh, let's use this example since this is the most common one. Uh, take what's some advice and maybe take me through how you would approach you want to get a raise from your employer. How do we do this?
Probably my favorite example of this, I heard a Simon Sinek video, and the way he pitched it is more, it's not about saying, I've done all these things and I deserve this. That's a surefire way to put the other like your boss. Now you actually put them across the table from you. It's an adversarial relationship.
They have to be defensive.
They have to be, because you're like, I am entitled to what I want.
And
Whether the
no one likes entitled people. No, like, and
oh,
you meet an entitled person and you almost don't want to do what they want just out of principle.
especially if you grinded your face off to get to the position you're in life and you have somebody else who's there, but also people in leadership positions also want to feel empathy. They want somebody to think about the position they're in. So if I remember the video correctly, he was like, listen, I love this organization. I want to be part of this future. This is my personal goal. I'm like, how can we create a path for me to get there? Notice with that, it actually borrows some strategies from a book called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. I recommend it to pretty much everybody, especially my clients. It uses something called tactical empathy. But within this situation, the first thing you're saying is, "Hey, I value this company for X, Y, and Z. This is important to me." You're highlighting the things that you care about. You're also putting the future success together in mind. You're saying, "I want to get here together, not adversarial." Hey, same team,
Partnership.
partnership. And then you're saying, "I explicitly do need this because hey, I'm having a kid or I'm having a family or got my bills went up. How do we get a path to go there?" More often than not, just because you cared enough to sit and hold space, you're actually leading from behind in a strange way. While you think and are expecting, like, my boss or the business owner should know, should be doing this. Well, you're using should. You're saying you. Well, you're taking no ownership in how you communicate. Whether you're right or wrong does not matter. So with this strategy, it gets you to be a partnership, a collaboration together, and then you can find a path to it. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to work out. Maybe you do need a 10% raise and you need it in the next month because whatever. And that person might be like, I don't have that capacity, but because I appreciate you so much, I can do this. But you know what? Like, let me help you find a better role in another organization or a different thing. Like, it opens the door to more opportunities, but you have to be okay with not getting the answer exactly that you want right then. You're slow rolling. Now you have to still follow up. It's not going to all get solved tomorrow,
Yeah.
but the thing you're doing is you're taking that person across the table. They're taking their anxiety down, their stress down. Like, oh my god, I've already got to pay these bills and this and this and this and this, and I have my own family to worry about, and I got this other thing, and I got the marketing thing to do, and they've got all these gotta and shoulds in their head, their own self-limiting
And they
beliefs.
may have a boss above them who's giving pressure down too that you don't even know about. Maybe
That
you made a mistake and they got, chewed out for it. And then they just, they didn't give you that intense feedback, back.
exactly. That's a great way of putting it. Like, it's the empathy to be okay, but it's first knowing, hey, I need this. This is what I want, and I want to understand the person across from me. We're talking a pay raise or a new job or negotiating like business stuff, but this goes in your marriage. This goes with coaching clients. This goes with talking to yourself, because we're so unkind. We're talking to some person across the table. We think it's adversarial. We think it's a fight. And the hard part is we got to where we currently are, our current level of success, using that strategy, but it's fueled by scarcity of I'm not enough. If you really want to grow and you want to preserve a relationship, and I'm speaking from personal experiences where I've had to go back and patch some things up, and I know you were part of helping me patch up some things in my previous friendships.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah, like that forgiveness, learning how to just take ownership from my own side and starting from there. whether I'm right or wrong on all the things is irrelevant because in the person across from you, in their mind, they're right. It doesn't matter if you're right. So if you can look to see the world from their perspective and open the door for them to start thinking creatively, they don't operate from that scarcity. They don't feel like they have to protect these resources. They can operate from abundance and bring creativity into the experience. More often than not, it's going to come out with a better outcome than you even thought was possible. Because the second you look like you're on their side, well, on the same side, they're going to start looking at their dashboard that you're looking at, like your checklist of all the things you've done. Like, James did do this thing. He did these 5 different events for us, or he wrote this thing and he made that great. He stepped up in the marketing thing, or he helped out this other colleague, or whoa, you know what? He really did do a great job.
Yeah, this guy's valuable to our organization, and we've had a blind eye on him, but now maybe we need to maybe put him in a different department that needs help or something. And then that's how, like, hey, I can't give you a raise, but are you interested in going to work for blah blah blah, in this department, and they can help funnel some funds for you a little bit over there. And I think your skills would match that as well, or something.
Yeah,
How
it's
does
exactly.
one deal with the big NO word, no? So that happens. You're in this situation. You're across from your boss. You've tried what Caleb said. You're being personable. You're looking at that other person like they are a human being, and you've done everything right, but you're not always going to get your way, like you said before. So how do you deal with that? How do you walk away from that, and how do you move on?
Well, I mean, the first thing I would suggest is don't burn the ships right away. And to do that, some people are going to look at this like this is not loyalty, but go test your skills against the market. Say it is with a boss. Have a couple interviews. The best time to interview is when you got a job because you're operating from a worst comes to worst. I stay in the spot I'm at. Okay, at least I'm still paid. The last thing you want to do is walk in from the I have to make this work, otherwise I'm all that works at some points in life, but you're putting a lot of eggs in one basket.
Well, and then
Yeah,
if you are in that situation, don't let the future employer know that you have all your eggs in their basket, because then they can do whatever they want. If they're like, "Hey, Caleb, we can pay you 50 grand a year, but you were getting 80 at the other job," and you just went through this whole spiel about, "Oh yeah, I left Purebred Athletics, all this stuff," and they're like, "This guy has no job right now. I'm gonna just offer him 45 and see what happens." And then and you're like, "Oh, but I really need 50." Or at least 50. How about 48? Like they have all the power in that situation.
yep. I have found when you come in with more options and you know very well what your skill set is on the market, when you're going in for that negotiation, the nice part is, at least within your current organization, you know more about what's going on there. People in other organizations just as much are pitching a perfect picture of the future for you. It's a two-way interview. It's not one way or the other. If you're operating from scarcity, it's going to see like the classic grass is always greener. It's going to seem like that. But if you're coming from a place like, I'm pretty good right now, I really am getting clear on what I care about, not just the financial incentive. What's the kind of role that I'm best suited for? What's the kind of environment I want to be in? What what are the values of this organization? Better yet, most people will never really think about this. What's the mission and vision of this organization? You won't think about that unless you're stable. You're not going to care about that because if you're really like, I got to pay my bills tomorrow, you're like, I need a job. But knowing that long term, if you really want to be a valuable asset to an organization, you have to be clear on those priorities. How much do I need to feel like I can sustain my life and be stable and consistent and show up with good energy every day? What's the environment that I tend to succeed in? What are the core values that mirror what I care about? And is this a mission and a vision that I buy into that's more than just the money? And I know that the people that are in this organization are about that mission too. Those are hard things if you're not feeling stable. So also getting clear on that stuff when you're in your when you come back to the negotiating table with your current position, those things are great things to share. So when
And
you
how
get
how
that,
powerful is it when you go to the negotiating table and you know what their mission is and what their values are, and you can speak on it? I imagine a lot of people don't do a deep dive into all the companies that they're trying to be involved on, but there's your some talking points right there. Like if they value, health and longevity, then you can speak on those things. And also you can talk about how you might be able to improve upon those things with the skills that you're bringing in. Or if you don't like what they stand for, then hopefully you're in a situation to not pursue that job any longer. But yeah, I imagine too. I don't know if you do this with your clients on having like your own personal mission statement, on and that should not match, but like be along the lines of where you're working too.
I love what you said there. Will we get the conversation around spiritual fitness? It's exactly that. Let's take half step back. I also want to say you might walk into a company and ask those things. I think people would be astounded how many, we'll call it the hiring person or the person who leads the organization has no idea. When you ask a question like that, hey, what are your vision and mission here? Their head will explode, and they might not have a good answer. They might look at you and be like, yo, this person's got something different screwed on tight here.
That would be
That
embarrassing, by the way, if I was the person on the other end. Like if it was my company, I didn't know my own mission statement or what the purpose of it all was.
Well, in the beginning, like you had to remember, most people open a business in the beginning hey, I kind of like this thing. We'll especially talk coaching. I like I like working out. I like helping people lose weight. I like making them feeling fit and good in their bodies. Awesome. Kind of a surface level mission. It's not a bad mission, and that might be where it starts. And in the beginning, that's all you know about yourself. Real talk, that's been part of my journey. It wasn't until this last year where I made it a poignant thing this past year just to discover and write down my vision and mission of Naked Sunday Studios. But ultimately, like, that's Caleb Nelson's vision. That's going to outlive me. That's why I'm doing any of the things I do. And I look for that for anything I partner with or any person I sell to or anything like that. Anybody that's going to come in, if we don't align on that kind of stuff, this ain't going to be a good fit. So, part of that, bringing somebody in who asks those questions, it wasn't until I started to feel like this existential angst inside of me. And I remember still, like, I didn't invest in personal development realistically and take ownership of that until after my dad almost died a few years back. Then I got some counseling and I had a life coach and a bunch of other things. I've spent probably, I don't know, $300,000 on personal and professional development at this point because I needed to know myself better. I didn't need to know the ins and outs of business better. I needed to know myself for what I was capable of holding space to. So with that being said, you don't know until you do. And somebody might ask that question, and what a gift. And when somebody comes into your organization and brings that enlightenment to you, maybe you do feel embarrassed, but that's not a bad thing. It's wow, okay, there's levels to this thing. Where do
They've
I need
made
to
you
go
better
from
already, and they're not even on the team,
here?
And
I
you and
haven't
I
paid them a
know,
dollar.
yeah, you and I know coming from CrossFit, you know,
Yeah,
right now CrossFit's having like a little bit of like an identity crisis,
I've
with
noticed.
with Coach Glassman being gone, there is no longer a figurehead at the top of CrossFit who is constantly preaching the methodology and the mission to everybody.
Yeah,
So now everybody's kind of like on the boat and they're like, is anyone steering the boat? Is anyone, where's that guy? Where's that lady that's like telling things? And most effective leaders, when you get together, they always remind the team of what is the mission. This is what we do. The analogy in CrossFit is bringing the shaker bottle or the salt bottle back to the center of the table. On like this is what CrossFit is right here. What we're saying: constantly varied function movement, high intensity, all the other stuff. It's not like we're going to do that, but we're only doing interval training. Oh, you want to move it up here, or strengthen the metcon. You want to move it up here. Everyone wants to move the salt shaker all around the table, but if you're the business owner and the leader, you have to always bring it right back to the middle and remind everybody this is what we do here, and this is why it's important, and this is why we're excited about it, and ramp up your team. So I would be looking for a company like that.
yeah. And even just with the CrossFit thing, I can say as somebody who went through the identity crisis of not being CrossFit, When I dropped the affiliation years ago, I didn't know what I was. I didn't know what problem I was solving. Dude, I went on a, I don't know, 7, 8 year vision quest to go figure that out.
This is
And
purebred.
even purebred, throughout purebred, I still didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what problem I was solving long term. I knew like I could still use squats and fitness and all these other things, but I didn't know like this deeper thing that I needed to bring out of me. And I give credit to CrossFit, like taking me to this level. The irony is, I see so many, and this is an outsider perspective, somebody who has friends who own boxes, friends with people who help people with their boxes. I think it's awesome. The irony is, we get people that are to a certain level and then they stop thinking outside the box. They are stuck within the very thing that brought them to that level of success. And ultimately, it's a branding idea. I know there's a whole thing at the Black Box Summit years ago that there was some fallout from that stuff. But I
Rob
was like,
Wolf, the whole
all
thing.
that stuff. Yeah. Yeah. What I realized on my journey after letting go of that, and this is circa, I don't know, 2013, 2014, right after Jay and I had officially split, we'd opened Purebred. I had a, I was like, well, what am I paying for this affiliation for? Like, I do my own shtick now. Like, this is not the same thing. While it's not the same thing, I know it's not this. I still can't say what it is.
Yeah.
And that was, I saw it happen a couple of years ago when Glassman had the fallout with everybody, and everybody's like, oh, I'm going to disaffiliate. I was like, you guys don't know what you're about to have on the other side of this. Like, you also don't
That's
know how good
interesting
you
because you had already gone through that.
exactly, man. And that's what I think people don't know. They're using a structure to their advantage, but there's going to come a moment of like, well, what's your shade of this? And I think one of the greatest things you can ever do as a leader is to expect that your pupils, your prodigy, your people that you took through the pipeline go off and do it on their own and make it better. It's expected that you leave the flock. I probably would get a lot of flack from that, and maybe I will. But
No,
that's
I think
something
that's
that,
an important thing. Like we had so many people go on from Albany CrossFit and start their own gyms, you included, and
yeah,
it's like that's just better for everybody. There's more, we can help more people that way. You can't have a scarcity mindset on it. Like if you have a bunch of coaches at your gym and someone's like, "Hey, I'm gonna start a gym literally next door." I want to have my own colors on the wall. I got an idea, all these things. I don't want to program muscle ups, like I'm going to do my own brand of CrossFit, and that's okay. If anything, you should help them, because now your role as a leader or a mentor or a friend in their life is going to change, and you can choose one of two things. You could disown them, you could be super negative about it, you can have a scarcity mindset and blah blah blah, you'll be out of business in 3 months and not help them, or you can reap the rewards of helping them and letting them know the mistakes that you made, and really like you'll probably be way closer because of that. And going back to
hard.
what you said about the black box, that's when CrossFit had a big falling out with Rob Wolf, who is the author of the Paleo Solution, and he was doing some like nutrition seminars here and there for CrossFit. And I
Yeah.
believe there was also a falling out at the same event with Greg Everett, who's a weightlifting coach, and he has Catalyst Athletics. And I know that part of the issue was, from what I've heard on the streets, I wasn't there and I wasn't even involved in CrossFit when it happened, is that um, Greg Everett had an issue with the medicine ball clean being one of the 9 foundational movements, right?
Mm.
And that's not how you teach weightlifting because he's deep in the weightlifting camp. And then I'm sure Rob Wolf had his thing on we should be teaching paleo at the level ones, which CrossFit doesn't really teach paleo. They teach the zone and they teach hormonal balance and eating the blocks and measuring and weighing and stuff. And what neither of those two realize is that when, okay, we know Dave Castro. We know the leadership of CrossFit. They did not handle it probably as tactfully as they could. That's when everybody would just hammer each other. There were probably a lot of expletives and stuff like that. But CrossFit has been defending its life since the beginning. And that's what
Yeah.
a lot of people don't understand. They've been attacked by every organization under the sun that was ever threatened by them. And they had to take the salt shaker and keep it in the middle. No, we're going to do the med ball clean, put it back in the middle, because we're trying to teach people to pick up an object and receive it in a sound receiving position without the obstacle of the knees. Then, when we do the sumo deadlift high pull, which everybody hates, we're going to learn how to pull from the floor, not bend the arms early, and have speed through the middle. And both of those things, when you learn competency on how to do all those things, when you do put them together, they do make a snatch and a clean. Like, and we'll get to that movement. We're not going to not teach it or not do that. This movement has a specific purpose. Like so, and we have to start somewhere. But that's what those people weren't understanding. It's like we have to teach grandma how to do this, not the national level weightlifter how to do this. So the needs are different. We have to teach her how to deadlift with a flat back and drop under something without the obstacle of the knees. We can get that done with a ball. So
Yeah.
CrossFit had to keep the salt shaker in the middle. This is CrossFit. It is not Olympic weightlifting. We're
Yeah.
using Olympic weightlifting as a tool, and we're
Yeah.
using the zone as a tool. And yes, we can talk about healthy nutrition practices, no sugar, all that stuff. That's written in 100 words, but we don't have to preach paleo. That's Someone can start to dive into paleo. And we had a million people do paleo zone back in the day, but that doesn't need to be the prescription. And I feel like, I don't know if they've ever hashed this out, but I feel like that's why, and again, I wasn't there. If I was going to say why Greg and Rob were wrong on their end of the argument, that would be why. They're not understanding the needs and what CrossFit is trying to do. And then CrossFit probably too defensive, and it came to shouting matches and kicking people out of the summit and stuff like that. And it's that contrarian. It's remember, I don't like being told what to do, but I like telling people what to do. That is CrossFit. That is the leadership. That's all of us. So you could see how that would be super explosive. But that's my take
Yeah.
on the.
My remembrance of it was actually more of about a brand,
Oh,
which
okay.
any one of those things ultimately starts talking about that. And what I've come to learn in this entire, what I will call a spiritual journey, is that's the actual thing. Glassman always said, the thing that changes is the thing between your ears. Or so I'm paraphrasing, or at least my remembrance of the quote. Um, the reality is we're doing an identity shift from where I was to where I want to be. But the reality is who you were is actually like who you truly are is buried underneath all of what you currently are and what you were in your past. So inevitably at some point, this tool, CrossFit's a tool. It's not the life solution. It's a tool in the toolbox of all the things. That's the way I look at it because people, and again, as somebody who's grown up in a cult, people get dogmatic about the vehicle. It's paleo or zone or vegan or carnivore or
And there
name
is no
whatever.
other way. You're wrong if you don't do it.
Dude, that's the way it was. I still remember. And the other side of it, I was bought into that ideology as well. I remember I would walk through the grocery store, look down the bread aisle, and judge every single person, like, what idiots. And I was like, the day I had a slice of bread and I enjoyed it and the world didn't come crashing down, it dissolved this belief inside of myself. Like, well, I kind of like this thing. Maybe I need to rethink this. And especially
And
as
it's
the
hard
need,
because you and I and and others live in the fitness world, so we do this every day. Those people don't. Maybe the guy buying a loaf of bread that you're looking at, he just worked a 12-hour shift in a factory somewhere and he's just trying to he's gonna buy some bread. I gotta make a sandwich for tomorrow, man. You don't know,
yeah,
like we don't know their lives. So sometimes it's hard when you're like so thickened into a topic, you lose empathy for people who don't know what you don't know. Or
that
what
is,
don't know what you know.
yeah. And the other funny part is the Dunning-Kruger effect is you get to the middle. Like I always refer to it as, especially in the CrossFit world, and I'm sure you know this, there's that person, it's almost like the teenager in CrossFit. They got kind of good after a strength cycle or something. They're feeling themselves. Here's the first time they take their shirt off. They're like, I think I know all this shit. What they don't know is what they don't know. They don't realize how little they know, and their journey to learning about themselves has quite literally begun. And I think, if I look at CrossFit from a global sense, at least the bigger brand, I think it's going through a teenage phase right now. I don't know who I am. I'm kind of figuring it out. Leadership's changed. What is the vision? What is the mission? I mean, as far as I knew what the mission was, when I look back on CrossFit, it was the tagline, forging elite fitness. You got to remember, Where the hell does that attract? Elite. You're going to get some people that are pretty gung ho. Look at who the original people were. It was a lot of former athletes, former military. Like that was people that are intense, that are very comfortable in extreme environments. Entrepreneurs tend to be very open minded. Like I will go run myself into the darkness. Early adopters. That's a different persona than when you are not. And I'm not saying obviously the two of us we've served people from 5 to 80 at this point with a lot of different needs. And it was in that journey of learning how to serve those people that my own personal brand and messaging needed to change because I didn't fit somebody else's bigger narrative. And from personal experience of when I did leave CrossFit, it was quite unceremonious. I still remember the email. I still have it, in fact. Not very kind. I was like, cool. All right.
CrossFit HQ?
Yeah. It was like,
really, when
cool.
you de-affiliated, they sent you a nasty email?
Yeah, there was something on our Instagram from like a month before that I still had hashtag CrossFit. And I wasn't running the social media at that point. It said hashtag CrossFit. And they were like, it was kind of like, oh, look, you're still using like my response was, thanks for letting me know. I'll go take it down. But to me, especially where I was when I was debating heavily, a lot of my identity was wrapped into CrossFit at the time. It took me even till this past year to unwrap what it means to be a CrossFit athlete. Like that's the way I need to show up in the world. That was the expectations I put on myself, all that stuff. I had to be this guy, even though I was actually, most people don't know, I was actually quite miserable under all that. I was very lonely. I didn't actually know how to talk about the things I care about. And everybody was at arm's distance almost 99% of the time. And I knew you during all this time. So, my apologies for not being more open and vulnerable about that stuff. For somebody who was holding on and wanting to still feel like I was like, man, I owe them something, my yearly dues or whatever it was. And I started to be like, the people that I serve are not coming in for this. But I feel like I'm obligated to do this. Like it gave me an opening, but it's time for me to move on. And when I was kind of like on top of that, like Jay and I were definitely not talking at that point. Like I felt like, cool, like thanks for answering that one for me. Don't get me wrong. Again, I'm here and I love what it has provided. It for sure has revolutionized things. But the reality is like CrossFit, Orange Theory, F45, whatever, people are borrowing from everybody. People are borrowing from everybody. They're all group fitness in the way it's pitched right now. It's all group fitness. And you are seeing a push towards more private coaching because at the end of the day, personalized coaching and attention is what people are actually paying for. People want to feel like the individual that they are it matters. They don't, as much as people think, I believe we're in the era of like our generation. What we're currently stepping into is what I call the identity wars. Look at the labels, the pronouns, all the stuff. Everybody's trying to jump into some group to try to figure out who they are and where they belong in this world.
Everybody wants a tribe.
Everybody wants a tribe, not realizing like you yourself are good enough and it's worth just being that. But it's incumbent on you to define that without everybody's else's external labels. And I'm saying it's hard.
Continue. I
Like,
think it's interesting that you said that CrossFit's going through a teenager phase.
yeah.
And I had to wrap my head around that for a little bit, but I get it now. Like, it actually makes sense. Dad's gone and you've moved out of the house, so CrossFit is like trying to find a job. They're dating. They're going to college right now. They're trying to figure out all that stuff, and they're not going back to dad for advice, at least not right now. So
Yeah.
it's they have to find themselves, and I hope that they do soon. And I also thought it was interesting your take on elite fitness as well. I don't
Yeah.
think I've been to a million CrossFit seminars, and I don't think I've ever heard anybody explain what that means. Of course, they do the constantly varied, blah, 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 all that stuff, functional fitness, the methodology, but the tagline, forging elite fitness, to me, I always took it as this is elite fitness, not in a sense of you have to be elite or for the top athletes, but it's more of like this fitness program is elite in the results it will get you compared to other fitness programs. So it's just funny, we both have a different interpretation of the same thing, And maybe
Yeah.
that's something that CrossFit could do better on explaining that or using that in a way that communicate to the public, because I guarantee more people have the thought of what your definition of elite fitness is. And that's also partly because of the games and the games
Yeah.
athletes and everything.
Well, even look at what Glassman was doing towards the end. He was like, dude, I don't care about the games. The games was like, here's what I don't think people really appreciate. This is me after I've removed myself. If I take all my ego out of it and I take all my past experiences and I look at it, the most powerful thing he did was take movement and put a score to it. People love gamifying things. It's a brilliant marketing strategy. And you take a bunch of competitive people, you get a bunch of people take their shirts off. Sex sells, man. And you see these extremes, and it's awesome. I was bought up into it because I was a former athlete. But when you think about somebody, and this is what I still pride myself, I've told plenty of people about this. One of the greatest joys I ever had was being, especially in the beginning, was being the first experience somebody ever had with CrossFit. Because I knew I was painting their vision of what the rest of this thing is. I was a more gentle touch, and I did sell pretty well. And I give Jay a lot of credit for how Albany specifically was marketed. Um, that is so important. And at the end, CrossFit Glassman was like, I care more about this CrossFit health thing. I think that's brilliant. What does it mean to be preventative? You started to see a pivot in that, but now it's still like everybody's trying to make everybody happy. We can't make everybody happy. I had always come from a background. I know both of us came from Cortland. You and I always had more like that mobility, preventative health, holistic wellness approach to things, more diagnostic in the way you look at, like, how do you prevent injury from happening? How do you bring that stuff? A lot of that's about stress management. Most people need to go, they don't need intensity. They actually need to learn how to chill out. They're so intense in the rest of their life. Their version of intensity when they show up is compared to fire breather John over here. That's what I'm supposed to be. That is one of the dangers of group experiences. They're not bad. As somebody who's been part of a cult in various different ways, group dynamics are very powerful. But if you don't stage the group dynamic in a very important way, you're going to get people who look at that thing and go, I have to be that. Because what do you get rewarded with? Oh, I have the fastest Fran time. You're the member of the month or whatever.
Yeah,
That's
it's like what you said. People, people want the personalized touch in their coaching, and the best coaches will be able to take a group of 15 people and make everybody feel like it's an individual session. You should be using names, eye contact, talking to everybody, not just spending most of your time with your star athlete. And but then you also can't spend most of your time with the new guy and neglect your star athlete either. Like you have to be so on it in the way that you navigate the room and you interact with everybody, and also have them interact with one another, whether it be with like a game, a question at the whiteboard, or even just complimenting someone. Hey, everybody, look how awesome Caleb is. All that stuff. High fives at the end of the workout. There's there's so much personality and personalized and maybe a human touch into it versus just here's the workout that we're doing. Get your stuff. All right, here's the warm up. Run through the warm up, and you're walking around. You got your coffee, or your PVC pipe on your back. You see coaches doing that, and you're just
yeah.
kind of just like, would it be any different if you weren't there? Would everything that happened in class be happen if you weren't there? And if the answer is yes, then you're not doing a good job, because all of the teaching, correcting, all the interaction, that's you. You're driving all of that.
There's two things I want to bring out. Okay, let me see where I want to start with it. I'll start with this one. I'll start with private programming. I know that's a big shtick that people argue against. I think there's such a narrow-minded view of what programming is. Personalized programming has nothing to do with workouts. It has to do with your behaviors and your habits outside. That's programming. That's your actual programming outside of the box or the gym. That was the one thing I had to really wrap my head around. Hey, how are things at home? Hey, how are things at work? What's your stress levels like? Real talk, all of your clients actually do know what to do after they go through the foundational movements. They do, because they could just do it. And you could just keep doing that over and over again. Group fitness is like, I'm going to make it fun and entertaining so you can kind of want to come back. That being said, you don't have
Best
to
hour
set
of
it.
their day. Shout out to Ackerman.
Shout out to Jay. I know he does that. That being said, personalized programming of what I'm talking about, the integration of these philosophies into the one-on-one experience at home. Because real talk, most people are pretty introverted, especially in a lot of situations. As much as they might say something, what even the words that come out of their mouth in a group environment often don't align with what they truly believe. They're trying to impress the people around them. What I've learned in my personal experience is I wasn't comfortable enough holding space for the real. And when I had to get straight on myself and make sure I knew where I was, what I was comfortable holding space for, and how did I need to navigate lifestyle change, learning how to talk about the stressors of work, learning how to talk about the stressors of home. Yes, talking about some nutrition and some of those like movement things outside of like, and walking more. Walking 8,000 steps a day could be part of their personal programming. People are paying for a relationship where somebody gives a damn. So that's one
It
thing I
could even
think that,
be something as small as one thing I do, this isn't to toot my own horn, just an idea if
yeah,
someone's listening. If I look at the class of for the day and I see Caleb canceled, I could just, all right, I'll coach the class, whoever shows up. But what I typically do is I'll text Caleb and be like, hey, saw you're not coming to class anymore, or we missed you in class, and that's small little thing. You get the
yeah,
such a happy message back because people are like, oh, this guy cares
they
about
cared.
me. And
They
then
paid
now
attention.
what happens is the more that I do that to people, when people cancel or they even just can't come to class, I get text beforehand. They preemptively let me know, hey, coach, I can't come today, or I'm going to be 5 minutes late. So instead of them just coming in late, they tell me now when they're coming in late. And I text them back, I'm glad you're coming in. No worries. I'll get you caught up. And they know I got their back. So it's
Yeah.
like just a small thing like that. If you're teaching group classes and you see people who don't come in that day, not contacting them and showing them that you care, it's 2 seconds. You could do it when you're on the toilet or whatever you want to.
Yeah.
It doesn't even have to be right then, before or after class, but just checking in with them, it's super powerful.
This leads to another thing, which I think is going to really be very difficult for anybody who owns any business, but we'll use fitness right now. Anybody who owns a gym. If your objective is not to put yourself out of a job, you're failing your client. You have to expect that they are going to leave at some point. Their job might take them to a different place in the world. They might have a catastrophe where they financially can't afford it. Whatever. If you genuinely care about that person, you're looking to give them all the tools and integrate it in their life so that they don't need you. This is where the dangerous side of the fun sale is. If somebody really wants to be healthy and assume that as part of their identity, you have to teach them how to do those things even when it's not fun. That is incredibly difficult. And I do think that's where 99% of people who own gyms are missing the mark. Because, and I remember seeing somebody on Facebook probably 9 years ago, they posted this video of a former client from like 8 years prior and said, this is what it's all about. This person is doing a pull up, sent me a message. They haven't paid them a dime in years. And they said, I put myself out of a job. They don't need me. And where I've taken this, and especially when people start talking about vision and mission statements, if anybody wants a good book to read, it's Simon Sinek's um, The Infinite Game. This
Gonna
is
have to write
when you
down all these books.
go for it, bro. I'll give you a whole list. The Infinite Game is basically legacy. What's the thing that goes on beyond you? What lives beyond you? The reason why people won't think about this, the reason why people really won't think about vision and mission is because you start thinking about your death. And most people are avoiding death. So they'll go do crazy intense workouts to numb out. I don't think about this existential angst. They work really hard with busy nonsense, or they get lost doing stupid tasks around the house. They stuff their face full of whatever. They do all of that stuff is I don't know how to grapple with my own mortality. When you start to sit with vision and mission, you start to think about life beyond you, and you start to realize the current strategies you're operating from are not sustainable beyond you. You don't even realize that you've made yourself a crutch. And that's really hard to stare yourself in the mirror and go, oh, that's the problem. Because the first thing it is that you think about is, but I need to pay my bills. There's the first problem. You're making it about you. You're not making it about the client. And I remember Glassman always said, he's like, pursue excellence, not money. That's it right there.
Yeah.
What is excellence? Well, you got to go define that for yourself. Excellence is the vision. We're painting this. At some point in this podcast, I'll share mine. But I think that part right there, fun can very quickly become the next distraction. And fun is relative. Fun has a shelf life. If you don't like, fun is different for everybody. My idea of fun is sitting around a campfire, maybe doing some psychedelics with my friends and talking about the meaning of life. That's exciting for me. I don't even need any of that stuff. I could just
I'm
sit
gonna
in
write
my
this
living
down. We
room.
need to talk more about these psychedelics eventually here. I'm writing this down.
I got you, brother. Those things, I don't, I'm actually just finished a 3-day fast today. So, like, I've learned how to get my version of fun from almost nothing. I don't need food. I don't need a fancy building. I could just sit in a room across from somebody, cry my eyes out with them, and feel like, wow, I felt connected. That's different. And most people paint fun as a big party, as a big another like when most people have gone through their entire day and they're stressed out and burnt out, what that person actually needs, especially who is a high performer everywhere else in their life. That's why that word elite fitness can get dangerous. I have to live up to this new standard, as opposed to I need to learn to chill out. How about I go real slow today? That's what gets rewarded. How about today you actually asked a meaningful question to your wife or your husband? How about today you sat and you played a board game with your kid? That was your actual life training because you learned how to manage all the stress levels in your life. That's why this conversation becomes very difficult. And I'm saying this as somebody who struggled to look in the mirror and say, wow, I'm failing at every single one of those things. I've made it all about me until this point. The second I shifted to vision and mission, I go, oh, I need to change. I have to literally put myself out of a job as best as possible, even in this moment. Because if I don't operate from that, how am I going to show up as a father? Am I going to actually set my kids up to not need me, to not be a crutch? Can they be a functional contributor to society? What about my clients? Are they going to be so dependent they have to come to me to look better naked or to feel good about it? That's a crutch. So I think the next evolution of the box, and I do think CrossFit's best suited for it. I do think they are, because I think CrossFit has wielded community better than any other fitness brand on the world. This is the evolution that I think it's going into right now, because it's shown that you can have a community-based thing, but there's Active Life and there's Affiliate U and then there's Tubering. Everybody got their own different philosophies about like, how are we supposed to make it better? Well, each
But they
one of
all
them,
still use CrossFit.
they all still use CrossFit. They
Yeah.
always like, they'll talk like, does that 45, does Orange Theory? Like, let's be real. CrossFit stole and borrowed from all the other ones too, like from gymnastics, from Olympic lifting. They just borrowed from stuff. When we get so wound up in this is the way, and I used it all, as opposed to like, if you really care about giving it away and helping people, you'll still make the money. I've seen it in here. Like, this is a great example for the practitioner. We had a chiro and massage clinic. I've watched people with doctorates chasing one new degree after another after another. I have to have one more certificate, one more this, that, and you sell your clients on your certifications, the things, the letters on the wall, as opposed to, hey, what do you need? I might pull from this toolbox. When you think that all this stuff is the magic, it's not. You have to realize the client might be your kid, it might be your spouse, it might be your fitness training client. They have the answers because they actually do know the limitations to their next level of growth. And I'm telling you right now, it actually isn't more squats and eating more protein. Those are tools on their journey. The real problem is, wow, you know what? My wife and I have different versions of what healthy is in the house. So she brings in one types of food while I'm trying to do this thing. We can't talk to each other. That's the real problem. That's the stuff when you actually, the classic, trainers are underpaid therapists. That's the real problem you eventually get to when you have a one-on-one meaningful relationship with people after we closed the gym, I went off into the internet space and decided to try to pitch myself as a relationship coach because I was like, that's all I actually talk about. All I ever talk about is somebody's marriage. It's the first thing I talk about, whether they're going through a divorce or getting married or something in between. That's all I ever talk about.
Yeah, you know everybody's Ford, family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. You know,
Bingo.
if you're a CrossFit coach, can you look at your class of 10 people and be like, I know everybody's Ford? And if you
Yeah.
do, then now you can be like, hey, how's Susie? You know, or how are the kids? You can ask those questions. People really appreciate that and lets them know that you care. And then you start to work through that with them. Well, maybe someone's having a bad day, like, hey, you got 10 minutes after class. What can you talk about it? You know, I've
Yeah.
found that, let's say, just as an example, I'll use myself. You know, I've had some issues with my feet recently. So like it's I'm limping around and people ask, a lot of people always they always ask, hey, oh yeah, you're limping. What's going on with your feet? And really what they're waiting is for me to tell them what's going on with me, and then they tell me about the things on them that hurt. And as opposed and so what I try to do, because I try not to get wrapped into that. It's very easy. You get drawn into like it's almost like you're having a pissing match on like who hurts more. But the correct response would be is if I ask you, Caleb, oh Caleb, I see you, you're grabbing your shoulder a lot. What's going on oh, it hurts. Instead of me telling you about what hurts on me, would be to ask you a question and be like, oh, is there anything I can do for you to help with that pain? Is there, or it could be any situation, like what can I do to make this easier for you, or what can I do to help?
Yeah.
Instead of just coming back with my answer to the question as well.
Yeah. That's a great, wow. That was a powerful thing. I think that everybody should be hearing about that. And, I'll take it one step further. I used to do some outlandish. I've said wild things in front of people. Hey, I grew up in a cult, something like that. What you don't realize is actually when you make it acceptable to talk about stuff, it's like, oh, cult. That's the kind of level of stuff we can talk about here. I guess I can talk about my stuff. That doesn't it in perspective. It doesn't seem that extreme. So it holds the space of, oh, if you're willing to talk about that, this I can talk about. This makes it acceptable. So what you brought to the table there is great. If you're, well, this is the other side of this. Most coaches don't realize they're going into the industry to solve their own problem, as opposed to, I'm going to the industry to help others. The intention is very different. And I think everybody in some way, shape, or form starts that way.
That is why
Um,
I went into it though. Like I didn't go, I had nothing for myself to solve in this. I just maybe the thing I had to solve is like I didn't know what to do, and the counselor is like, "Oh, you like working out? Well, not well, you can help people." And his example is actually you can start a gym and then sell a gym, and he told me about his buddy who made a lot of money doing that. But I never wanted to do that. I liked exercise and health and fitness, and then when I found out that you could do that as a job, I was like, well, I'll help other people do that.
exactly. I think that I think sometimes the journey starts there. I like it enough and I can help people and I can get paid for it. Sounds awesome. I think you learn the depths of it starts with like I like helping people to learning how to love people. Those are two different concepts. Because when you learn to love helping people, inevitably you have to go deeper within yourself. And I can only speak for myself. To help people on the next journey, I had to go crawl into the darkness that was in myself and wrap my head around that because I was the lid on my capacity to see their problems. I couldn't solve anything beyond the surface. I couldn't hold space for the real problem that was actually limiting their growth. So,
Yeah, you're
right,
working
wrong,
with
good,
a
bad.
client on their nutrition and they're never losing any weight. Like you've got to dive deeper than the macros, dude. You got to figure that out.
Yeah, because it's not food and exercise. Again, the information is free out there on the internet. Anybody could find it right now and never pay you a dime. They're paying for a relationship, for somebody to care, and for somebody to help them navigate the emotional spectrum that they're floating around in. With, yeah, I mean, at the same time, you also have to have you can't be an idiot. You have to have a technical background
Yeah.
enough to say, like, hey, let's keep it within the reins here. So you can make better decisions as opposed to this is the only way you can do this because then you're just pigeonholing their lifestyle growth. So
Yeah, and it's
yeah,
like
that's
kind of like, you can help someone with their nutrition, or if you see the people, your clients, just maybe giving them a compliment or saying something nice to them, or a high five or even a hug. You don't realize so many people don't get that at all for months, years on end, where someone's like, "Hey, you did a good job today. High five," or like, "Oh, hey, how was or you had a promotion at work." You could be the only person as their coach that cared enough to say congrats on the promotion. You did a good job, because maybe someone doesn't have a family, they don't have friends, that they're more of a loner. Or we have plenty of people who come to the gym who aren't originally from this country. So you might be the first person that they tell, "Hey, I did this thing because they like Caleb, and Caleb texts me when I don't come to class, and he cares about me," and they share those things with you. I just had a um a member share with me something that just did, they're trying to be a lawyer, and they just gave their first dissertation in front of a jury and stuff like that. And it's like cool. I love getting messages like that, and I love getting pictures of someone just had their first baby, in the middle of the night. It's like, this is why we do it. We're trying to make better human beings, as opposed to better athletes. The athlete part is
Well,
is easy.
Well, yeah, once we get training out of people's minds as like it has to be fitness, like exercise, it's not about the barbell you lifted. You're actually trying to prepare somebody mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually for the next phase of responsibilities in their life. I'm sure you've seen this. One of the most profound revelations that I've ever had is within the next year of somebody joining the gym, especially those purebred, and this is like when it really dialed in. I was like, within the next year, every single time somebody would either get a promotion, start a new business, find a new relationship, or get married or have a kid in the next year, every time, because it was about investing in themselves and taking a step in building their overall confidence. And classic saying of fitness is a gateway drug to personal development. Fitness requires that you take ownership of the process. You have to show up. Nobody's going to stuff the chicken and broccoli in your face. Nobody's going to do squats for you. Nobody's going to do it for you. You have to take full ownership. Sounds like entrepreneurship. When you can no longer point the finger of blame at anybody else. With that understanding, the growth you receive is incredibly empowering. You become more confident because you took the actions to say, I have this internal resume of all the things I've done. When I take my shirt off, I feel like I look a little better in the mirror. Or when I get attention from my spouse, or I can take my clothes off and keep the lights on when I'm intimate with my significant other, like, and I feel okay. Those things are so profound. Or I feel good in my suit at work today, and people said, "Man, I just looked a little brighter." Those things come as a byproduct of the commitment to take care of yourself. Now, it's not always just I'm working out day one, but I think that's what you're bringing up, is that those things are part of the process. They're not the result. They're part of the next evolution in your identity and the next evolution in your self-awareness. So
And
I
if you
love what
don't
you're talking
if
about.
if you don't nurture those things as a coach and have that side of it, and they just come into the gym and hammer themselves every single time, then that they're going to get burnt out, and that's why people stop doing CrossFit after 3 to 6 months. You know,
Yeah,
the coach doesn't get involved in you. They're only involved in your your workout.
that's it. I mean, you hit the nail on the head there. And you brought up the word burnout, and obviously we can talk a little about some of what things I focus on here. But like burnout is and is not a real thing. At the same time, burnout is a consequence of you not living in alignment with your values and your vision. So in essence, it's a circumstance. You can't really put, like, there's signs and symptoms of it happening, but it is a consequence of you not living in alignment. The hardest part is most people don't know what their core values are, and they don't know what their vision is. They don't know their purpose. So of course they get caught up into a place because it solves the immediate need. They operate from scarcity. I don't have enough. Blah, blah, blah. I'll jump in. If the coach or the guide, which that's all we really are at the end of the day, if the guide is not helping that person investigate these deeper things or feel supported in those deeper things, they're not going to feel valued for the person that they are. And eventually you just become as a coach, a dancing puppet in front of the class, barking orders and saying squat lower. That's not like they'll feel like just another number in their life. When you say, hey, Stacy, wow, I saw that picture of your newborn. Wow, that's amazing. Or you guided them and you checked in on them. If you don't know that your clients are pregnant, you have a real problem on your hand. You should know the most transformative experience of a woman's life. You should know that that's going on and
Yeah.
know like they're going through an internal thing. Like I'll
They
say
should
this
be
right now.
they should be comfortable enough to tell you that thing, you know, or if you have
Yeah,
female clients, they should be comfortable enough to tell you when it's their time of the month and you need to adjust the workouts for them, you know, and it's fine, you know. It's not a
yeah.
secret thing between men and women, you know. If you've ever had any women in your life and you're a man, then you know these things, you know. So it's like there needs to be there's no secrets. Just like in fitness, there's no secrets here. I'm going to teach you exactly how to do it, all the stuff I want you to be when you go to another gym, you could be their coach. I'm going to tell you so much and teach you so much that you'll be the best coach at another gym when you move across the country and they'll want to hire you. Uh, you give them
I've had
everything.
that. I've had that. I've literally had clients and other gym owners reach out to me, be like, thank you. Like, we didn't really have to teach them much stuff. And that's nice because that means that they're quicker to getting to the deeper stuff with that client, which is incredible.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man, those are, you said, I think probably the best way. Somebody asked me, like, what's it like to work with me? And I guess the best answer I continue to come with is like, I'm a dry run of being your authentic self. You're going to practice being and saying exactly what you think in your head and be emotionally honest because nobody holds space for like, really, what do you want? I still remember Sasha's, what do you want for yourself? Witty Whiffy still resonates in my head. So many people, the reason why people won't say it is because they feel like they're going to be judged. They think it's going to be silly. It might be, I want to be a clown when I'm older, and people are going to judge them. That's stupid. Or I want to open a business, and then somebody's going to be like, oh, that's too risky. Or I want to ask that girl out on a date. Or name your thing. Doesn't matter what it is. I think the best coaches practice being a mirror and allowing somebody to love what they see in that mirror. Practice saying whatever you want. Practice it. The dry run. Half the time I practice being somebody's husband as we're having a conversation. It's like, tell me what you want to say. Here's some things that you might hear on the other side of it. That's it. That's it. And when people do that, all of a sudden, like, dude, the squats and the eating stuff, that stuff they're like, yeah, I can do that. That's so obvious. I can do this. This is not a problem. I can drink that
But
water.
they
No
might be
problem.
even more into it after that too. Like they're like now all of a sudden they're like, you know what? I will meal prep, you know, look like I'm getting results on the emotional, spiritual side of it. I want those fitness, you know, type of results.
Well, more deeply than that, actually see the point of what it's serving. Most people don't are just going about their day mindlessly. They have no direction because they have a lot of stuff that distracts them, that pulls their attention. They don't know, they can't align, they don't have something to ground their behaviors to. A purpose, a goal, which is another way of saying the same thing, a goal grounds your actions and it focuses your actions. Oh, well, I'm going to be a mother, or I'm going to be a business owner. Oh, I'm going to be this. And you start saying, I am this. What do I need to do to train to prepare for that? Well, all of a sudden, well, I got to work out this way because I need to exercise. Like, I'll share this with you right now. Now that she's finally through the first trimester, my wife is pregnant right now. That's half of our
Oh,
conversation.
congrats.
Thanks, man. I'm excited. I was terrified at first. Don't get you wrong. I'm still kind of like in that phase of like, okay, now I can allow myself to be excited as I'm like figuring out like I'm getting grounded again. Half of my conversation with my wife is, so you want to be a good mom. What does that mean to you? Well, it means I want to be healthy. Okay, what does that mean? And it organizes, well, okay, to make this easier to be healthy, oh, we're going to meal prep. Oh, we're going to do grocery shopping this day of the week. Oh, we're going to only keep these kinds of foods in the house because it's easier for us. I'm going to go to bed at this time. All of a sudden, the habits that people know to do become so obvious, but more importantly, they become part of who they are. This is who I am now. Everything else that is not that it is that person across the thing, like, ooh, I'm rejecting you, but not from a place of anger and malice and trying to resist it. It's, oh, I just don't put myself in those environments. Oh, I'm not going to the bar. Oh, I'm not going to whatever. I'm not going to try to sleep with a bunch of people. I'm trying to be a good representation for my child, or I'm trying to, whatever that is, the behaviors become so obvious. And all the extra stuff that you were debating is like, is this a good idea? Is this a good thing? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Well, you realize, oh, 90 of those percent of those things are distractions that are based off of opinions of people that don't know who I am and don't care about what I care about and don't align with the same values.
And
Well,
for the
I'm not
people
strong.
that figure that out, you hear it all the time when like a woman gives birth to a baby and their husband or like maybe this you're talking to your grandfather or your uncle and they tell you about how they changed and they're like, wow, they became such a different person, and they, it's always in a good way, like I didn't know my wife was like that until she had the baby and figured out what she had to do. And you just
Yeah.
see them evolve as a person. Like they level up, like you level up. And then I'm assuming you have to figure out how to level up yourself up as a father too, which is a whole different thing, but yeah,
I'll give you
it,
that one. I'll give you that story. Real talk. I came back from my honeymoon, 40 pounds overweight, looked in the mirror. I felt distant from my wife. I was like, I'm
after the
here,
honeymoon.
even on it. I felt so removed from I was around my family because my sister decided she wanted to get married in France at that time, and my grandparents were there, so she decided to show up. I actually officiated her wedding, whole bit. But I felt like I was still just playing a role. I came back. There was some friction with my other business partners at the time. I was like, here we go again. I felt distant from that. Um, and I had one client who told me he was never leaving, send me a text and be like, hey, I got to cancel. I was just like, it was the final, like, I don't take care of myself. And the other part, the natural thing you think after you get married is what's next? And when I looked in the mirror, I was like, I'm not only am I not a good representation of what I'm selling to my clients, I'm not okay bringing life into this world. I would not be a good steward or a good guide to my child. I would not be able to host space. Naked Sunday, real talk, was about becoming more in touch with myself so that I could shift and adjust my life so that for the eventual day when I become a father, I can be a good guide to this life that I've chosen to bring into this world, this responsibility that I asked for. I need to be that. And I think not enough people actually preventatively think about those things. We just we kept putting it off until we're like, we need to check in. We need to check in. We had to align our family. We had to get clear on our core values in our home. We had to talk about our goals. And then we had to talk about like, what does it mean for us to be good parents? Those are some
Yeah,
real
you have
deal
to be a
things.
solid team. Like,
Yeah.
I've heard some horror stories about how like, the grandparents on one side like to do this with the kid and maybe the dad is okay with it, but the wife isn't, and they don't communicate about it because they didn't meet beforehand and be like, okay, what is acceptable for the rest of our family to do? Can they just pop in unannounced? Or like, because I've heard about that before. Like all of a sudden your in-law is just like, hey, we're here to see the baby. Or even if you don't have a baby, they just pop in. Like they're just like very involved in your life. So you have to decide as a partnership, what do we allow and what do we accept?
Yeah.
And
And if you,
I guess if you don't have that conversation, you're allowing it to happen, by not having the conversation, I guess.
it's 1,000%. What's in the Christian faith, it's called pre-canon, something like that. It's basically like marriage counseling before you do it, right? Something like that.
It might
I
be a
think
Catholic thing. I don't know.
maybe a Catholic thing. I'm not sure. I know that there's a thing. It might be Catholic. So forgive me, anybody listening, that I'm butchering this. Um, but I do know there's a thing that it's basically marriage counseling, maybe for 12 weeks, but you're getting deep on what do you guys care about? Because you are marrying the family and you got to know what you're going to allow and what you're going to carry on and what you're going to disallow and what you're going to move forward with. And I don't think enough, like people forget it's very easy to get married. My wife and I, Wednesday afternoon, like just cause it was time. Um, what's really hard and what you're seeing is like, how do you build a life together? that's why I think so many divorces are happening. People are chasing, I want to have the ring, I want to have the pretty wedding, and they go into big debt to shell out all this stuff because they're trying to impress a bunch of people, families, try to show up their friends, to have this thing for a party, for everybody to get drunk with a bunch of people that you're never going to see again. Because you didn't get clear on what you actually like. Why are we getting together? Why are we going to build a life together? And you see this, they'll have the kid right after because that's what you're supposed to do. Check the next box on the American dream. 10, 15, 12 years down the line, or the classic like empty nest situation. Oh, we realized we didn't like each other. Now it's time to get a divorce. Like
Oh my
I watch it
gosh. What a
constantly.
nightmare that would be. Like you're
Constantly.
because it often happens too when like you're in your 50s or you're in your like 40s or like and then you realize, oh, I didn't take care of myself for 20 years and now I have to start dating again. Like I can't imagine the the intensity of that situation. But a lot of people get into that situation, even if they're young. You hook up with someone and then you both stop taking care of yourself, and then it ends, and now you have to rebuild your life. And then where do you go? You go to CrossFit. But yeah, you have to have those conversations. Before you even get in it. I'll use myself an example. I was speaking to someone very briefly on like, well, hey, maybe we should spend more time or something like that, right? And then the topic of faith was in there, and like, well, where do you go to church? What do you follow? What do you bet? And then it ended right there. We were I was like, well, I don't want to go to your church and I don't like what they do over there. Like, so like we couldn't get past the faith thing. Now
Wow.
imagine getting married to someone and that was a big thing and you're compromising or you're like, I don't want to, I just want to, here's the easy fruit. I'll pick that one. And then now there's conflict all the time because like, well, I don't want to go over there. I like to do what they do over there or blah blah blah. Or like we had a whole there was a whole discussion on like the religion side of things and like, well, what do you actually believe? And all right, our goals and our values and stuff don't align right off the bat, and so neither we just didn't pursue anything. It's fine. I'm way happier having that conversation up front than having it years down the road when you have so much time invested.
Dude, I gotta give you a lot of credit for what you did. Like, and you just said that it might seem like it slows things down and it's a slow, arduous process to do those things, but long term, it saves you so much time, so much heartache, so much dissolution and destruction of your internal self-worth for compromising and moving the line back and like never standing your ground on anything. It just happens because
Hours of
it's too convenient,
conversation talking about it.
bro. So I give you so much credit. Like the fact most, especially nowadays, like faith is a thing, and it took me a long time to come back to my own spirituality, because I threw a lot of it out, the baby out with the bathwater. And being upfront and saying like, hey, I have a friend, she's dating again after a divorce, and she's told me, so she was so excited. Like I talked to somebody, and the first thing I said is like, hey, so what are your core values? She asked that on the thing, and she's like surprised when she got a meaningful response back on the first one. And it's like, yeah, cool. Like that's what you want. You want to actually have somebody who's, if you don't have somebody who's willing to have that stuff, when the eventual darkness of somebody's going to die in your family, or there's going to be an up or down in somebody's health, or there's going to be maybe some hiccups in your financial, future. It's not if it's going to happen, it's when it's going to happen. If you're not square on these things, when you're in the trenches, you're not going to like that person next to you. You might not get through it as cleanly as you think. So I love what you're saying there. Like, and dude, I got to commend you again. Like, courage to be clear. This is what I care about, and especially nowadays when I definitely believe there's a deep yearning for a deeper spiritual, faith-based connection. That's being very much poo-pooed by common culture, which I think is a heartbreak because I think ultimately what they're really upset is like, that's actually what I want. I don't know how to connect to that, because I was hurt by some other spiritual thing in my past,
Yeah.
religion, whatever. No different. Um, I think what you did, it takes a tremendous amount of courage, and I commend you for it. I hope anybody listening to this part is like, whoa, not only did somebody else do it, but like I can do it, and it's a good thing, and
Yeah.
you
And you don't have to
saved yourself.
be desperate or willing to jump into something that you aren't even interested in to begin with just because it's another person. Like, so a whole conversation, like it was almost like a job interview. It was like, well, what are your goals for the next 5 years? What do you what? And then, kids, yes or no. All right, if you want kids but they don't want kids, the worst thing you could possibly do is get into a relationship expecting them to change what they want in 5 years, and then you still don't have kids, and now maybe you're too old to have kids, or etc. Yeah, you ever see that show with David Spade, Just Shoot Me?
Very briefly, but
It,
I,
it
I
it's an old
go,
one.
go yeah, yeah,
So
go ahead.
there's a scene in there where these two I will find the video and send it to you. It's hilarious. The two like big upper bosses are having like a conversation, and the one guy, he goes, I've always found you very attractive. Maybe we should, I'm single, you're single. Maybe we should form like it's like a business, but it's like maybe we should get married. So they sat down and they're Hamptons or Hawaii, like for their vacation. And he's like, Hamptons is like, is that negotiable? All right, once a year in the Hamptons, once a year in Hawaii. And then they talked about kids. All right, two. One. Okay, they narrowed it down to one, but it must be a boy. Like, so they were going back and forth on like all these things, like their business transactions. And then they finally got to one thing where it's like, is that negotiable? Nope. All right, I don't think we have anything here. All right. And they shook hands and then they left. And it was like, it was such a funny like example of that, of like, they, of course it's a comedy and they made it out to be like comedy, but like, it's a very real thing on like, you should have that conversation, like it maybe doesn't have to be first date conversation, but before anything gets super crazy, talk to the person about it, like, what are your goals for the next 5 years? Are you open to moving? Like if I got promoted and I had to go across the country to do this, are you willing to uproot? No? Okay, you want to stay here a family. I kind of don't want to, I don't see myself living in New York for the next 5 years. I want to be in California. Get it all up front, and you'll find out what that person's values are and where there's wiggle room too. Because it doesn't have to be black and white. It could be maybe, when you and Lexi were talking, you have a conversation of like, how many kids do you see yourself having? Okay. And you're like, I want 7 kids. And she's like, I'll give you two. All right, fine. 2 kids is fine. But I would really like one to be a boy. Not that you can request that, but like you're hoping
Right.
for a boy, in the next 5 years, like, how long do you want to stay living in New York? Like, would you ever be open to moving to Spain? I've always wanted to live in Spain. Like, have that conversation, and that'll make things a lot easier. And I did not have those conversations early on in my life at all, but I'm having them now that I'm older and I know what I want, and I know my values better now. Of course, you don't know you have any values when you're 22, and just out of college. I mean, I bet a lot of people do, but a lot of people, you don't think about it. I never thought about things like this back then.
Well, you haven't had to really test them. That's the
Yes.
real. Like, we have not organized society, at least currently, with what I call right. I don't know, that's not what I call. They are rites of passage. There is no, the idea of a communion or bat mitzvah or bar mitzvah, like those types of. These are these real. This is where people like threw the baby out with bathwater. They're getting rid of these rites of passage. You go through the idea of a trial. I just recently, my friend, the one I was actually telling you about, she sent me this book from Harvard, whatever, and it was the first time I was ever really confronted with the word crucible. A crucible
Good
is an
word.
experience where it's a great word, where you go through essentially the darkness. You go on a trial, a challenge, and the deeper you go, the darker you go, the more different, the more evolved of a person you come out the other side. Right now, we're in a society where we're just babying people and then sending them off to a new babysitter off at college, and nobody's holding anybody accountable. It's like you can do whatever you want, and like just keep changing. It's like, as opposed to, I'm going to test you and challenge your beliefs. I'm going to put you through this thing. Yeah, it's hard as a parent to say, or as a coach. I think that's why it's so valuable to learn a coaching skill, because you have to, especially when you've been in the industry long enough, you realize if you don't start certain conversations, you don't challenge people early on, they don't actually grow, and the consequences of that are actually quite perilous.
Well, and now in current times, and I'm sure it's always been a problem. people don't like being challenged, like
That
if they
part.
have a view, and that's how they feel, they put, there's too much feelings into it, but they cannot answer the question of why. Well, why do you think that? Why do you feel like that? Well, Bill told me that. All right, well,
Yeah.
did you ask yourself, where did Bill learn that fact from? And did you, so the why question is hard, and why is not meant to be an insulting thing. If Caleb tells me, all right, I think people used to have tails, why? Why do you think that? Or instead of being like, people never had tails, look, we don't have them now, like whatever it may be. Which actually, I think there is something about we used to have tails, but
Right.
oh, that'd be
Yeah, you're
cool if we
right,
still did. You imagine that?
dude. That'd be wild. We'd be in a strange world if we all
You
had
could
tails.
hold your coffee with it wrapped up and like still work and just sip with the tail, man.
That'd be so fire.
All right. The
Go ahead.
evolutionary process dropped the ball on losing the tail type of thing. I would, yeah. Although I guess sitting with the tail, imagine sitting on a plane with a tail. There are probably some issues with having it. The modern day
probably,
issues.
probably we'd be starting like a lot of issues with that, but maybe like tickling other people with your tail and whatnot be a real weird kind of
Getting your
situation.
tail stuck somewhere, like, yeah, I can see it issues.
You're so right about this. People don't like being challenged. And I think there's a misconception about this is the deeper work that I've gone into. People have a misconception about what love is. We have gone into this place where people are like, I love you and I accept you for all that you are. And that's true, but that's the one side of love. It is also equally accountability, acceptance and accountability. That's the masculine and the feminine energies together. Together, that makes a whole. Again, it's masculine and feminine. Both sides. There's one is more, you've heard of like order and chaos. Like those two things both need to be accounted for. Hey, kiddo, like you failed on your thing. That's okay. I still love you, but let's get back up. You can get back in there. Those kinds of conversations. And I think you've seen it in your own coaching, learning how to coach somebody through failure, through being wrong about something. I took a shot, it didn't work out. Guiding them through that gets them to challenge their internal beliefs. And that's important. If you're not willing to say, hey, I still believe in you, get back in there, you're saying, I don't believe in you at all.
Let's use a
And that
box
is
jump as an
failure.
example.
Yeah.
I mean you've seen it a million times. Someone wants to do a box jump, and even if the box is this high, like if for those of you just listening to the audio, I've just had my hands like 3 inches apart. People will struggle with that because they've never haven't jumped, and they don't have the confidence or the experience, and maybe even in their entire life they've never jumped. I've met people in this profession who they tell you, I've never done this thing, and it's like, how how have you never had to do this? And it's just how they've walked through life. They've never ever had to do a thing where they had to jump up on something. Like I've met people who've never jumped, like
Yeah.
maybe when they were a kid, and then you see them fail, and like you're like, you just get up there, just do it, and you have to guide them through that process to get on the box. And then there's also almost, well, there are other happy feelings, but like, when they get on that box, the celebration, oh man. And when they get on that back box, your reaction needs to be through the roof. Like, oh man, like that's like they just won the lottery when they get on that box.
Well, the deeper part is, and this is what I've noticed, and especially women were the more profound example of this, because I'm sure you've seen a lot of this, is like women will come in and they'll say, I'm weak. Okay. You're not going to deadlift with a barbell. Here's a kettlebell because it's less daunting of a thing. And they start doing the reps. Cool. Fine. Just do the reps. Fine. And then one day they're like, well, I did enough of this. I understand the movement enough. I have enough confidence in just doing that thing. I'm going to step over to this thing. And for me, it was always when I would watch them, it was 100 pounds. A woman would lift 100 pounds off the ground. It was like, this belief that they had in their head just dissolved. There's the PR dance, of course, that that's like, they're just
Yep.
dancing around. But what I really saw was like a new question emerged. What else can I do? Because if you really think about it, they had this wall in front of their face. I'm holding my hand up in front of my face for everybody to know. all of a sudden that hand was removed and you could see that wall was removed. It dissolved, and all of a sudden you could see a lot of more options in your life. You saw, oh, maybe I can deadlift 135 pounds. Maybe I can go out on that date and it's not going to be perilous. Maybe I can go ask for that new promotion and it might work out. It doesn't, like, you've constructed a world where you now can also envision success. And that's what you're talking about. You're eventually saying, like,
Yeah.
we're dissolving these internal beliefs around all of this stuff.
And
You
that's
have
the
to first
best
take it.
when, you don't have to, just to keep it on training, you don't
Yeah.
have to push the issue. If
No.
someone comes in and they're not confident, they're intimidated by the barbell, you put a kettlebell in their hands. When they come to you and they're like, all right, let me see that barbell. Like, that's a magical moment. And I love those moments when of course you're always encouraging them to try, but when they come to you and they're like, it's time. Like, I feel ready, but you don't have to push the issue. Like, just because we're doing barbell deadlifts today, we can use a million other objects, to accomplish the task of the day and what the tool of the deadlift is, what we're trying to get out of it. And you could still be involved in the class, still get coaching, all that stuff. But it's like, you don't have to, you can meet them where they're at. Like, a good coach will meet each individual where they're at right now and then tailor it to them.
Yeah. Which, to bring it full circle around this conversation, that's where the dogma around, we'll call it CrossFit or F45 or Orange Theory, or name your brand. When you get so dogmatic about that's the vehicle or the tool or the thing, it's the best, it's the right one. No, it's the one that works for the person to get the result that they care about. That's important for somebody as a leader or an entrepreneur, or whatever, the person in charge, the person who's guiding the person on the journey. You're simply a conduit with some tools. And the more you're dogmatic about your vehicle, yes, you can get some short-term results. When you make it more about the person and saying, what can they accomplish right now? What words would land better with them? What approach would land best with them to achieve the same result? Could I do it with less? Could I do it with less equipment? Could I do it with no equipment? Could I do it with not a gym? Could I do it without me ever saying a word? Those are the things. When I said before, this is a weird thing. And I brought, it's bringing back that I'm putting myself out of a job. How little can I do to get the result for this person? So I actually was the flip side of what you were saying before. Would they be getting the same experience if I wasn't there? That was the goal, so that they could recreate the experience on their own accord without me in the room. So for me, the less I had to say, the better of a job I was doing, because they were bought into the personal growth experience as to needing me to be there to shepherd them through the workout or whatever. Doesn't mean you don't have to be there, because, again, we just talked about it. You kind of have to meet people where they're at. If they feel more confident with you staring down at them at the moment, awesome. If it's they sent you a video while they were working out in their living room, awesome. It's whatever. How do you meet the person where they're at, and not getting dogmatic about what does intensity have to be and all the spreadsheets and the graphs and all the crazy shit that goes. The client doesn't care.
Yeah,
They
and
care,
you
can you
don't need
help me on the
to
journey?
keep them under your thumb either.
At all.
Like, someone who shares the same thought. Clem Penlay was big on, I'm trying to put myself out of a job. I should develop you to the point where you could go to a weightlifting meet on your own, call your own numbers, warm yourself up, time it out, and go out and do that thing. And I prescribe to the same notion. Of course, I mentored under him, and we
Yeah.
knew each other for many years. But, like, my add on to it is that, yes, you should be able to do that. And I go to the meet with you because you want me there. And when I'm there, I compliment it even more. Like, it becomes even easier because you don't have to worry about that. And we complement each other and we work as a team instead of
Yeah.
coach athlete. Like, all right, you sit down, you blah, 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 is like there is some of that. But if I wasn't there, you'd be able to survive and do very well. If I am there, now we're taking it to the next level together, and we're really trying to accomplish some things.
You highlighted something really powerful. I've already brought up the term early, self-actualization. That's actually a shift in a coaching approach when you become a little more evolved. Because when somebody wants that type of a coaching experience, The reality is they already have probably geeked out enough on the stuff. They already actually know. There's very little actually teach my clients. They know the information. That type of a person understands that having a third party perspective with a relationship that espouses the same values, values the same approach, when they're in that scenario, while they could do it alone, they respect and appreciate an interdependent relationship and an outside perspective to just double check their work. That's a different game. And that's really mindset work. Like, hey, you feel a little off today? What happened? Like, let's just double check. Everything cool at home? Yeah, everything's cool there. Cool. How's the nutrition? Cool. You had a rough night's sleep? Cool. Like, let's just adjust. Let's make these couple adjustments. How does that sound?
Yeah,
Oh,
maybe
yeah,
you
no.
come into the gym and you're having a really bad day. If you were by yourself, you would just continue missing lifts or having a poor workout experience. But if you have your coach there, they're like, Caleb, what's going on? And you're like, I got no sleep today. And then that's when you get that feedback of, well, let's adjust the workout. How about we do this instead? You don't have to
Yeah.
do the programming. It should be always super flexible. And
Every time.
that's why you're there. And also you're there because you are the one that notices these things and you will be the voice of reason. If I'm training by myself, there is no voice of reason. If we're crutching into the gym, well, we still have to max out today. But you have your coach there to be like, James, you're on crutches. How about you take a day
Yeah.
off? How about you don't do this today? And you work together to build a better plan. Or your
Yeah.
coach is the one that realizes, hey, you got a new pair of shoes. Yeah, you got a haircut. Everyone's always surprised when I'm like, Caleb got a haircut today, and announce the class. It looks good. Because you are looking at them all the time. So you have all this data. You see everything. And then
Yeah.
you can use that in a powerful way when you're interacting with them.
From an objective lens, what you did a great job of illuminating there is yes, you're within yourself, but if you're caught up from like a poor night's sleep or you had a fight with your significant other or somebody, you might be a little emotionally off kilter. And operating from an unstable internal emotional center is where you make those, you go back into survival mode. You're like, I'm behind. I got to do more. I got to do more. Your coach says, hey, this is what I'm noticing. Remember that reasonable thing when you're like good on everything? How would you, if you were coaching yourself, how would you show up? The way I use is I'll show the mug here, but I would usually like to have my Ted Lasso mug. It says "Hello
Oh.
Sunshine" on it. Ted Lasso, you watched it,
Everyone tells me I need to watch this show, and I have not. I've
bro?
I've
You'll
I've, I've
go
actually recently
spiritual
just gotten into anime. The Barbell Club has convinced me to watch some anime. So, but I need to add that onto there.
from a coach. Dude, I went on a spiritual journey watching this thing. I felt like it was speaking to things I needed to hear at that time in my life. There's a thing with a soldier in a mug. So that's just a thing. I won't even go down the road. But say you're the mug. Okay. You're the mug. Everyone's pardon. Your mug is your life. And on this thing, it says "Hello Sunshine." The reality is you're not outside of the cup. You're not outside of the mug. You're that toy soldier or whatever dropped inside the mug. Now I've got coffee in here, and if I swirl it around, life is and the chaos of life happens. Not only could you not see the outside of the mug, but you're also even more lost. Even if you had seen it once, you kind of lose sight of common sense. A coach is the person on the outside saying, "Hey, this is what it says. Let's still the cup. Let's calm things down. Let me help guide you to the next step." Another metaphor is like you can't read the label from inside the bottle, like the toy ship
Yeah.
that you put inside the bottle. Same concept. That's the value of something like that because again, what I've learned, the greatest minds in the world, they have advisors or coaches or whatever they want. Not because they need them from a technical standpoint, and sometimes they do, they want the expert, but they're getting them to like give them objective feedback to make sure they didn't miss anything. Because as they were lost in the chaos of their life, things getting pulled in different directions, that type of relationship is very different. They're helping them make it very obvious and very simple. When you're youthful, you don't think you need that. When you're grown up and you're like, I have all these responsibilities on my plate. Oh, I appreciate the value of a deep relationship. I want to invest in that because I realize it's more about me not doing things than doing more stuff. It's about me not saying yes to things that don't align with what I want because I know long term that's not going to help me out. It's hard because it's a different relationship. It's preventative health.
Yeah.
Hard to tell somebody the number and the return on investment of that until one day there's a hell of a lot more money in your bank account. You have more sex and you feel happier in your relationship. And you see six pack abs in the mirror. Like that's what it is, and it doesn't go away. Like
Yeah.
that's the real of what it is, of what that investment is. So
I like that. If you're in the cup, you can't see what's outside the cup. So you need someone else to tell you, hey, this is what's going on with it. Like it just made me think real quickly of like if you had a candy jar that the candy inside of it was sentient, and every day someone takes one out and eats it, and they're all horrified. But on the outside of the jar, it says free candy, or
ah,
please one, like, but you're on the inside and you don't know that, and then you're just horrified and stressed out the whole time.
that is a brilliant metaphor. Brilliant. I like how you took that and elevated that to a whole nother level.
Sentient
Brilliant.
candy, it's what I do.
Wow.
So now all of this, lack of communication, uh, maybe not setting goals, not having a personal vision, a personal mission statement. Are these all things that kind of feed into burnout? And I know
Yes.
you have a new project called the Empowered Leader Project,
Yeah.
where you're working with impact-driven entrepreneurs to overcome burnout. So
Yeah.
let's dive a little bit deeper onto the burnout. You already mentioned before that burnout could be real or not real, or
Yeah.
probably in certain situations.
Yeah.
How I guess my first question is, how does someone even know that they're burnt out in the first place? Like, and then second question, which I'm sure you'll go into it, is what is this empowered leader project?
Love it. Yeah. Thanks for the question. Let's start with I'll do the signs and symptoms. I call this the unholy trinity of spiritual burnout. Underlying this, often the first thing people start to feel is like, I want something new. I don't know what it is, but I don't feel like I can be that. Like when people say, like, I am feeling called to do something more, I want to have more impact. They're usually good at what they're at. They're actually pretty good at what their current situation is. That's kind of like the first, let's call it existential thing that might pop up into somebody's head. What that manifests into, what that might be also saying. On the outside, the unholy trinity shows up in three different places: your wealth, but business, professional life, your relationships, and ultimately health. I first saw it in health because, that's where I started all my career. And then I've expanded to this. So we'll start with health stuff. Weight gain, probably the most common. Sometimes it's weight loss, chronic aches and pains, um, chronic like sleep problems, fatigue, malaise, brain fog. You just don't feel like yourself in your body. But definitely, like the most obvious, weight gain, especially nowadays. People just eat to distract themselves. That's the health. Um, Often the chronic pain comes from I'm doing too much. This is a fun one for the intense workout people, and this was me as well. People don't know, like I used to walk around shredded to the nines. My back and my knees were killing me all the time because I was just trying to numb out on intense exercise, which was not what I needed to do.
And everyone
I do
looking
not.
at you is just like, I wish I could have those abs. So it's like, do you want these knees too?
You want these knees, and also, do you want to know how like internally lonely I am? Like I really hated myself. Trust me, you don't want that. So there's that. Those are consequences of that. Or hey, you put on too much weight and your joints can't hold up. Like it's not I have a bad back, it's you're carrying 40 extra pounds of weight, real talk, or you're not doing strength training, you're losing weight, you're weak, so your tissues can't support the structures in your body. That's where the pains are coming from. Pain is not a bad thing, it's a signal to change. So that's one area. Relationship front, which when it really comes down to it, everybody finally says, like, when I say, so how's things at home? They take a big breath and they go, well, that's a whole nother story. I'm sure you've had that one.
Yeah.
Often it's more friction at home. You feel like you're very distant from your partner. Oh, look at my emoji things popping
How
up
did that
here.
happen?
Apple update did something weird and I get like thumbs up or I get hearts popping or I get balloons all the time. I love it.
Will it
Maybe yours
happen
will
if
have it. I don't
I'm on
know.
Microsoft. But for anyone who's just listening, Caleb was holding his thumb up, and then a little thumb up bubble popped up on your screen.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Um,
I'm jealous I can't do that.
it shows up at some strange times. So, there you go. It's often,
Hopefully nothing else pop. Like all of a sudden, like a poop emoji pops up. It's like, what does that mean?
yeah, that'd be fire. Um, yeah, and the home from it's a lot of like I feel distant. I don't feel connected to my family. I feel like my whole family, like I've had clients who are like we're all just on our phones and nobody's really talking to each other. That happens very common. Um, More arguments, maybe you're more at like fighting with your wife, your husband, like you don't feel like you have any time for yourself. That's a big one. And then with work, wealth, you have lost passion in what you're doing. And often it's something you used to love. Like I used to love owning a gym at one point. I thought I was the pinnacle. Nope. Like it wasn't what I needed, or at least with my version. Like I was falling out of love with that. What that also starts to lead to, if you don't love something, you don't like it. In fact, you start to resent it, you're not going to nurture it the same way. So perhaps you're not having the same conversations. Maybe there's more friction with your staff. Maybe there's more distance with your staff. You're not even talking at all.
And this should be
Well,
the greatest job in the world, where you're just ready to get to work every day. I mean that
any job.
we've all
And
experienced that in CrossFit, where you're like, I can't wait to get to the gym today and coach these classes.
yes, I can say for myself, like what I was missing, not was I needed a deeper connection. Like I needed to talk about this spiritual element, this identity piece, or wherever the purpose piece. That's what it needed to facilitate. That's why I do well with people that are like in leadership positions because they're driven by something different. Um, and they ultimately like you stop communicating, you stop loving what you're doing, you eventually start resenting your clients, you start losing clients and you start losing money. Like that's where this thing snowballs into.
Yeah. You
The
don't realize
kicker
you're not being as friendly as you were 6 months ago, and people notice
well,
that. Just like how you're
yeah,
always looking at them, they're always looking at you, and they notice
right.
everything about you, and you notice everything about them. But you're the one in control and leading the group and leading the conversation most of the time.
Absolutely. And I shared all of those because, if I had to put a gun to my head and say where it started for most people, if they really looked into it, they probably don't feel valued at home. But even if somebody's like an impact driven leader, if they've fallen out of love with their work, that's part of also what they identify with. Like, I feel I'm a business owner, I'm a this, I was externally motivated to do the stuff. You come home and you don't have passion. Oof, it's hard. But eventually it snowballs into all those things. And remember, your body feeds your work. And if you don't love your work, you start asking yourself, well, what's the point? So you stop taking care of your body the same way. And you still want to be of service to all these obligations you have, your family and all that. So you start putting everybody first. What does it mean to be good? And then
And
you
you make
stop taking
concessions
care
probably, right? You're like, well, I'm
everywhere.
busy. I got to clean the box. I got to do this. I got to fill that class. I'm stressed. I got bills. Let me give me a donut with my Dunkin', and then you start self-medicating. And you don't even realize it
Bro,
probably,
nailed it. No, you don't. In the beginning, you don't because you get away with it. In the beginning,
because you still
one
have the
don't.
abs.
You still got the abs. Like the world didn't come collapsing on itself after one donut. The same way you don't get six pack abs after one salad. But because you got away with it, you had the abs the next day in spite of your behaviors. But you do it enough times, it's going to stack up. And that happened, man. Like exactly all these things happened to me until one day, too many, like there's one too many things. There's always the straw that breaks the camel's back. So the way I like to describe burnout, and that's what it is, like the full burnout, I'll bring back the mug again. So I've got the mug here. Burnout is a consequence of the gatas. And you brought out busy, the word busy, another four-letter word in my vocabulary. You're not busy. Your life is full. You chose to have all those things. And that's where I want to offload. Well, everybody made me do this. Nobody made you do anything. You chose. You don't have to pay taxes. You choose to pay taxes. You choose the benefits of being part of this society. You choose the benefits that come from paying taxes. You choose the consequences of not. There's benefits to both.
You could move.
You could move. You could go from New York to Florida and pay no taxes, like income tax. Like that's a real thing. You could
Wait, there's
choose
no
that.
income tax in Florida?
No,
Really?
you know,
Oh,
no.
all right. No, I
That's
didn't know
why
that.
dude, you move to Texas or Florida. It's part of why like remote work is so great. Like all of a sudden you switch to another state and dude, you could buy a house with what you just saved. Like it's
Ah,
insane.
New York.
I know. New York's a special place. That's why they say if you can make it in New York, if I can make it there, I can make it anywhere.
Yeah.
With like terrible singing. But if you think about this mug again, with all that busyness, like here's the mug is again your life's responsibilities. Think of it as a canister for stress. Most people start off, I gotta do all this. So they pour their work responsibilities in. Awesome. They fill it up to halfway. I gotta take care of the family and the kids. Cool. It's like to the brim. And all of a sudden, they still have that old identity of what I have to be with my old athlete self or my old this, that, and the other thing, six pack abs. I remember that old routine that I had. That's how I'm supposed to be fit. And they just start pouring, and there's not enough space left in the canister into this mug. And it pours over, and the coffee scalds. That's the burnout. That might go in the form of you injure yourself, you are out of breath walking up the stairs doing something very nominal. It might come like true burnout might come in the form of I got a divorce. It might come in the form of we went broke it like we lost a client, we lost a staff member, we had to declare bankruptcy. Like there's levels to this game of what that is. So when you talk about like midlife crises, that's usually the thing that leads up to it. But if you had to
Can you
walk it back,
recap the Trinity again? The three things? What are they?
it's health, relationships, and wealth, business.
Okay, so
I call
burnout affects all three of those.
all three of them. It's inevitable. It is inevitable. That's why if you can pay attention to the problems in one, and that's why standards and core values, which we'll talk about in a second, are so important because that is what, even at the most micro level of somebody violating the values or you violating the values, it has to be addressed then because it will snowball into I avoid it, I kick the can down the road, and eventually that snowball effect turns into something you can't overcome. That's why it's so important. And again, there's those categories under it. So under health was things like put on weight unexpectedly or lost weight. There's a thumbs up again. Chronic aches and pains, sleep issues, chronic sleep issues. You're constantly fatigued or brain
Cravings.
fog, cravings. You're just busy all the time. I don't have any time for myself. In relationships, there's more friction or distance, ironically, in the same space. Like sometimes you're like, I have to get in a fight to feel like I even mattered to somebody in a relationship, which is part of the classic like beaten what I think it's the beaten wife syndrome or something like that. That's how they say it, or the broken like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You get into a fight because it's easier to feel like you mattered than to be alone. Those
Yeah.
kind of things.
You want
But
like the
you
stimulation and the excitement or of it. Yeah.
you get what I'm saying. And then in work is I've lost passion. There's more friction with clients, staff, or lack of communication altogether. And even if there is communication, it's not about the stuff that matters. You're avoiding the crucial work. And then eventually it turns into financial disarray. Those three things turn into that spiritual burnout. Underneath it all is it's time for an identity shift. That's what we're really like, who am I is the big question. And that's as
Or
we lead
would you
into
say a return to a previous identity? Like maybe if you lost yourself at some point, like on like who you used to be kind of, deal.
yes and no. So often I think it comes back to like the inner child in you. Who is that 5-year old that just loved doing this thing?
That's what
When
I'm
I was
thinking of.
so
Yeah.
we pile on a bunch of BS in our life trying to chase external validation. And that's part of the climb through the survival thing. I get more food, I get more shelter, I get more relationships, I get more titles, more certifications, more that stuff. You get to a point where you're carrying all these external labels as identities. And they're like, well, who am I? Who's the real me in all of those? Because each one of those titles comes with a different expectation. And it's usually governed by who you're paying attention to in society. And they eventually start to conflict. When you switch into self actualization, it's actually about a removal process. How do you get back to that pure version of yourself? So that's where they say yes. But now this is the more evolved version of that inner child. It's the one with the skill sets and knowing how to wield their wisdom. Like when you're a kid, you're like, oh, I'm just me. And then you hear the classic from the mouths of Babe.
Yeah.
I'm just this thing. They speak purely. When you're older, you're relearning how to just be that. And how do you be you, that pure version of you, in your health, in your business, in your relationships? And the way I've looked at this,
And maybe as a coach, how do you get people, how do you draw that out of people? You know, like in the gym, you have someone who comes in their first day and they're super shy and they don't like to talk in front of the group and stuff like. But then like a year later, a certain song comes on and they're dancing and whatnot, and they never would have done that on day one.
this is what I've learned. If you, this is what I believe, and this is what I teach to people. I call this the three pillars of spiritual fitness. It's core values, time management, and energy management. Energy management review the health practices. Time management is uh, where you put your attention in your schedule for those three things. I call it the nexus of happiness: self-care, quality connections, that being the relationships that align, and meaningful work, the stuff that lights your world on fire, the things that are your passion. Core values is your identity. If you define yourself by your core values, that can show up in everything, whether it's talking to a friend at a coffee shop or in your work or with a client or with your spouse. You can be that person because it's more about a standard of how I show up. So for me, my first core value is respect. How do I respect this person across from me? But also in this engagement, how do I respect myself? How do I respect my time, my energy? How do I respect my body? It opens up how questions, which can be very contextually applied, which is so important because wherever you grow to, you don't know the next thing that you might be involved in. But with that solid internal grounding, you can start to ask and answer better questions. So yes, you need to first, like sometimes, like you got to start somewhere with everybody. So sometimes I start with core
Yeah.
values if they're ready. Sometimes I start with time management. Often that's the biggest one for most of my clients. Or energy management. It used to be, hey, let's just get you squatting a little bit. Let's get you moving a little bit. Let's just get you some more meats and vegetables. Let's get you sleeping 8 hours. Whatever. That's where it started. Then like sometimes core values are hard to land with for a lot of people. Time management. How are you setting up the minimums in your life? And when you do that, now you're actually learning how to teach people how to make space, which was a Naked Sunday, and ultimately sitting with the big questions in a way that's safe enough for you to sit with them long enough to get the answer. That's how you get there. And then you define your core. When you define your core values, oh, okay, I know who I am. When you know who you are, you start to feel more confident about where do I want to go. Oh, but not only that, when you know what your values are, you start to reposition the relationships in your life. Oh, you don't align? Cool. You're not in my inner circle. You're not in my top five. Cool. I'll give
Your
only this much.
MySpace profile.
Your MySpace profile.
Was that
That's
top five or
part of
top
it.
eight? What was that?
I don't remember what it was. Maybe it was top five. Um,
Oh, I like this. Your voice is much more robust now that you're on
I had
the regular.
the headphones on. I apologize. Um, that is I mean, it seems silly, but there's a book called Good to Great by Jim Collins. There's a third book for you.
Oh, there we go.
He talks about the people on the bus. Now, not only do you need to get the right people on the bus, but then you need to get the right people in the right seats. If you don't know your values, you don't even know who's coming on the bus. The right seats is based off of your skill sets and your proclivities and the roles people want to play. But you first got to know that because then you define time management, who goes where. That's how you navigate a business. That's how you run your life.
And it's okay to kick people off the bus.
It's okay. Not only is it okay, it's a necessity. There's a way to do it without being a jerk. Like
Yeah.
I've learned how to make a mess like nobody's business. And sometimes it's inevitable. Some people are going to get upset. Like it is what it is. But there's a few of those that when you asked about asking for the raise or whatever, that was a great conversation because that was what I did not know how to have before, which could have very easily been a much healthier conversation and evolution in the relationship if I knew how to have those tools. So those are the things that ultimately, when you take those things together, you're going to better help. Like somebody's not coming to you to lose weight. They're coming to you for the thing that's under the thing. What's the weight really a symbol of? What's it hiding underneath that? And sometimes people don't even know.
Yeah, they just see the weight in the mirror. And like they've gone, so like they started off, they had the six pack, and then they started, having issues in all three of those aspects of burnout that you brought up.
Yeah.
And time goes by,
Yeah.
and insidiously the weight comes on, and then one day, you know what? The probably the where people notice it is one day they see a photo of themselves. They were at like the Christmas party or something, and then they see it's always an unflattering pose, like you're hunched over the chips, your back is rounded, your stomach is in the punt. Like it's always like a horrible photo, and you're like, oh my, is that what I look like? And
Yep.
then now, next thing you know, you're on the phone with Albany CrossFit. We're like, oh yeah, come on in. Here's what CrossFit is. And you're in the class and you're like, yeah, I want to lose 50 pounds tomorrow, but you have to go back and now it's the coach's job as an investigator, a detective, to figure out how did you get from A to B and how do I bring you back? It's not just the burpees and the paleo. Those are going to be, like you said, those are tools to help, but we have to address the underlying issue. And I'll add too, for like I've learned from a lot of practitioners, chiros, PTs, and stuff like that. And when someone comes in and they're like, my elbow hurts, it's often not the elbow that's the problem. The issue could be the wrist, the shoulder. It could even be it could be their left. If it's the right elbow, it could be their left knee. Because these things are neurologically linked and how they live their life and what they do for a living. But if you don't touch the elbow, you're not going to get the buy-in. So you have to touch the boo-boo, and then you have to, be like, well, what about this? What about how do you sleep? Do you sleep on your arm like that? Well, maybe that's why your shoulder hurts. So yeah, you always have to address the issue, the concern of the person. You can't dismiss it, even if you know that's not the root cause. And then you start to weave in masterfully the layers, to get that result that they want, and also let them know, hey, this is why your elbow hurt. It hurt because of this other thing.
Yeah. Couldn't have said it better. And you have to look, as Kelly Starrett always says, like you have to look upstream and downstream because that's where the real
Yep.
problem. They're only aware of this being the thing. They don't have all that other knowledge, but when you listen to them and say, oh, so you came in here for some weight loss, or you came here because your elbow hurts. Yes, that's exactly what I came for. Awesome. Cool. You heard me. Thank you for listening. Then they're willing to take the next step of, well, tell me about other things in your lifestyle. And that's where this goes. And it's hard. It's hard to say that. And it's also part of the reason why I think health coaching, or weight loss coaching, fitness coaching, whatever word you want to use for it, because trust me, I've struggled because I don't care what somebody calls me. I just want to serve and support you on this bigger journey. I think it's one of the most powerful things to help. The preventative health thing is the hardest thing to sell because all they know is the surface thing. And
Yeah.
it's hard to put yourself first because that's all it is. Not being able to calculate, wait, if I do this, it actually allows me to do all those other things, which I want, but I'm afraid because I've failed a bunch of times and I feel like a failure. I don't want to fail because I have so much of these things. At least my current pain, I kind of know how to handle this life. I know how to handle this identity. I know how to just deal with my boss. I know how to just deal with these clients. I know how to just deal with my relationship at home. But somebody who wants to live a full, deep, meaningful life, and that's why I talk about impact driven, when you want to live with passion, that's a different conversation. You're saying, I don't want to just merely exist in this life. I want my life to have deeper meaning. I want to feel connected. I want to feel like what I'm going to leave behind, legacy, which is the top of self-actualization when it comes to what's called self-transcendence. The transcendence is the legacy, the impact, the thing I'm leaving behind that I will never get to see the full result of. And you have to be okay with that. But you also feel more alive when you go on that journey. You don't feel just like dead on the inside. So it's just different things that I think people are not aware of, that this is the journey you're going on, man. And
Yeah.
what I really love about this conversation today is that you've helped illuminate this is what an experienced coach is going to be thinking about and is dangling in the back of their mind and only dosing what you can handle at each little thing. This is what's really, it's scary because you say like, oh, I'm going to do all these things. Like, yeah, we're not going to do it just tomorrow, but this is the stuff that if you're not, part of what I always say is like, if they're not bought into like, we're going to go on this journey, like you got to kind of know what you're getting yourself into here. Like this is, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's not always going to be easy. It's going to be challenging in different ways. You have to want that. And if you don't,
Yeah.
it's on you. So,
If I was I guess to rename the title or the job, coach or trainer, it's like, hey, I hired a trainer or I hired a coach to help me work through this problem or to accomplish my goals. But really, what if they're doing their job correctly, what you're actually hiring, and of course it has to be, there's a business transaction thing to it, but who you're bringing onto your team and into your life is a friend, like so it's like, like I'm your coach in title, but like I'm trying to be your friend. I've got your back. I've told some athletes that like if you called me in the middle of the night and be like, James, I've killed again. Like, how many shovels do you got? Let's go out to the Adirondacks. Not for real, but like, like
we'll just clarify that, right?
yeah, we'll clarify that. Not that I've ever done that. No,
Right.
I'm kidding. But it's you're hiring a friend, and in some situations it evolves even further where you turn from friend to family. So like think about these titles and these labels, coach or doctor or practitioner, whatever you want to be. And then you move into the friend territory and you can help them so much more. Then eventually your family territory, and you've got them. They're super invested. And when I say you got them, I don't mean like, you're on the hook for dollars. You got them in the terms of like, they are going to be super open to making those changes that they need to make for growth. And then you'll both reap the rewards together. When you help someone, you help yourself as well. And you get that legacy part of it, that gratification where, you get a photo of someone's baby and they're like, coach, I just had a baby. And you're like, that's fantastic. I'm so happy for you. Or I got a new job, or I'm getting married, all these things. So yeah, that's how I would
You
think about
could, dude, I love that you said it. It's like you took, like you got to get out of my journal, bro.
it.
I would go so far as like, you're not only, you're, people struggle with this of like, you're paying your best friend. That's it. Because like I said before, people are like, when you really think about family, when I think about coming home, not only just coming home to myself, coming home to myself means like I'm in a space where I take all the armor off. I take all the facades off. I take all the labels off. I'm just me. That's home. Well, in the current state somebody is, they real talk, they don't know how to just be themselves. Maybe in one area a little bit kind of, and it flashes through kind of, but hiring your best friend is about saying, "Hey, I'm going to tell you some truth. I'm going to let you into my mind a little bit and I trust you." And I think it's really important we're saying this because when people can get over this concept of like, yeah, you're hiring a friend, you're paying for a great relationship, you'll stop. And you know this, people don't care about the certifications on the wall. I've had maybe 5 people in 14, 15 years of coaching, maybe longer, ask me about what certifications I have. They don't care. They care if I care. That's it. Ultimately,
Yeah.
if I can ask a question and they can say something to me in a way that they don't feel judged and I'm still curious and I allowed them to just breathe into that space, oh, okay, I feel valued. But with that second element there, what I think that also imposes upon the coach is you better sure as hell know who you are. Because if you don't know your values, you're going to try to just say yes to everybody and be like, I can solve everybody's problems. Nope. Because you're going to run into somebody that you don't know how to handle and don't align with, and you're going to try to be dogmatic. And you would have been so much better to just refer the person down the road to a better relationship. When you know yourself, you're going to put out, and this is like a spiritual kind of energetic vibes, like you're going to put that energy out and you're going to attract that energy. You're going to be able to see what relationship resonates with you. You're going to see the environment that, like, how do they, Dude, I coach plenty of people just sitting on the couches in my house here. It's like two of us just talking, the dog curls up on their lap and they just chill. Like if somebody's not cool with us just being casual, they're not the right fit for me. But I know that about myself. It used to be I needed a 6,000 square foot space with all the bells and whistles and all the trimmings and all that stuff. Nope, that's overwhelming. That's kind of like you have to know those things about yourself, because then you can create the space for somebody to truly be themselves, let their walls down. They're sure as hell better be able to cry with you, because if they can't, they don't know how to emote, they don't know how to grapple with that. You are not getting into the juicy stuff that's going to actually break the beliefs. You have
Yeah.
they have to feel comfortable with that.
And you and I both experienced this. Like we've had athletes, like when you're talking to them, they'll tell, like I mentioned way earlier, you might be the first person to know something, like those big life moments, but you also might be someone that they tell, like they're like, all right, I've never told anybody this ever before, but I'm gonna tell him, because it kind of came up in conversations or something along those lines, and then they'll feel so different after that. You like they won't have that weight of that thing in your chest where you've just been, "Oh, I'd like to tell someone this, but I don't have anyone I'm comfortable doing that with." And even their own friends, like you're outside of their normal friend group, their
Yeah.
normal family group. You're a safe place, because you have that space open, like you've been saying. And they know you care about them. They're not just a dollar sign. The dollar sign thing is hard because we would all do this for free, but it's like we have bills of our own, and life and rent and stuff like that. So you have to do it, but especially in today's age. But there have been over the years plenty of coaches, so many coaches, and weightlifting is a great example of that. A lot of those guys didn't charge anyone anything, they don't have the best lifestyles now, but it all feeds into one another.
Well, flip it on its head. This is a powerful example when I had purebred. I remember the first time I raised rates at purebred, I raised at $5. You would have thought I took people's firstborn. $5. Some people left. Some people had a big huff and puff about it. I changed zero about anything I did. Nothing. We just needed to increase it so that we could pay our bills, because there's something called interest and it goes up and cost of living goes up. It's just real. $5. First lesson, don't ever just raise for $5. If you're going to go through the same amount of headaches, if you raise it plenty of X amounts than that. Second thing I realized, people got better results just because they had to think, I have to reevaluate this thing. Those who pay attention. It is what it is. You're having to reevaluate what I care about here. And the funny thing is, people don't want like some drill sergeant person breathing down their neck. Like that's not my style at all. If you don't pay, the only thing you're going to respond to is somebody drill sergeant make it like it's going to have to tap into guilt and shame internally. They're going to have to hold up that mirror and go, bang. Well, you're judging me and all that. It's like, no, you just aren't willing to hold yourself accountable. The money, yes, on one thing, as a coach, you need to respect yourself. The second thing is that's the client respecting their goals enough to say, I care enough and it stings enough. I think it's underneath.
It's worth something.
It's worth something. But when you think about tithing, so we'll use like a spiritual element here. Tithing, the classic is like you're supposed to give 10% of your thing to the church, whatever. Remove the church organized religious dogmas. When you think about it more from a spiritual development, 10% is an uncomfortable number, and it's relative to each person. Like the pauper could give 1 penny because it's 10%, and the billionaire could give whatever. I can't do the number, but like,
and the church also has bills,
and
the pastor or the preacher or the bishop or whoever it is, they got to eat. That's why, like, you also had to, if you're reading the Old Testament, some of that food that went up on the altar to be burned for God, it also went, so the priests could have a meal.
Love that. The discomfort that comes from making that commitment, a spiritual offering. And we talked about the psychedelics earlier, I've done ayahuasca. They've talked about doing a spiritual offering beforehand, giving up something. So I've done fasts before it. I've done some other things. It's more about preparing myself. I'm going to go on a journey of doing something slightly more outside my comfort zone. It's going to be uncomfortable because I'm going to consciously choose to go without something in my current lifestyle that it would hurt enough for me to go without it. But because I'm going to choose to go without it, it's going to help me grow. That conscious effort, if we use that concept, is what challenges you to show up. So what I've learned is when I charge people more money, they show up to me, they're already beating themselves up. They're already being their own drill sergeant. The job of your coach at that moment, like, I'm very chill. I'm like, yo, whomever
Calm
name,
them down. Yeah.
I'm just there to chill you. Like, stop beating yourself up so much because they've already invested in themselves to do that. It's a very different relationship. So if somebody doesn't want to feel that shame and guilt, well, go pay somebody. You're going to, yes, have that initial like, oh my God, I don't know if this can work out. But when you go to that person, you're going to be able to hear that loving voice inside of yourself while you're already all day long, because that money pain is going to walk around with you all day long. It's going to have to fit in your lifestyle somehow. You're going to have to maybe stop dining out as much or whatever the thing is. You're going to have to choose to change some other stuff to make it work. That's always going to be sitting in the back of your mind. So when
And, you know, we've had it many times at Albany CrossFit where we used to have a 90-day challenge where
Yep.
the winner of the 90-day challenge would win a year's worth of membership to Albany CrossFit. And almost every winner of the 90-day challenge, once they got that year, it was like they won the 90-day challenge because they transformed their lives in 90 days. Because there was working out, there were benchmarks, there was before and after photos, you're losing weight. We even did body weight measurements. So the person who won a year's worth of membership was, they did an amazing transformation in their lifestyle. And then as soon as they got the free membership, they started coming in less. They put all the weight back on, and eventually they left the gym. Our last 90-day challenge, it was like a kiss of death.
Yep.
The last 90-day challenge winner that we had, you were already gone at this point. This is when Shai was owning, and this is the last time we did 90-day challenge. He destroyed it. I would put him up against all the previous winners. Like this guy, it was amazing. And after the 90 days, he got the membership. He started coming in less and less, and he was gone within a month, Caleb. Within a
Great.
month. Yeah. Of being fully invested and locked in and achieving his goals and working with coaches. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, it's okay if I don't go this week because I'm not paying for this week. So, it was the kiss of death every time. You remember all the people who won when Jay owned it, and it's always amazing how it worked out that way. So free memberships, they do. I understand that financially they help people, and that's why people think how awesome it's going to be, but your accountability level plummets at that point.
It's the irony that you should actually want to pay more afterwards, because to go to the next level, which most people are like, I'm just going to stay here, which that's not a real thing. You don't just hold that. Let's call it interest. If you just make the same amount of money every year, what interest rates right now are insane. Like, you're losing that on interest alone. You're losing money just making the same thing. You have to make more. You have to commit more to go to the next level. That's why it's percentage based. I've long thought about using it as a tithing model. Like, here, it's X amount of this, but most people don't want to say, like, this is my income, I'm going to shell out this much.
Yeah.
That way. But the concept is that. And if you can wrap your head around that, you're also saying, I'm not committed to the external reward. The winning of the challenge is a checkpoint. It's not the end. It's not the destination. This is one step in the evolution. I should give it to but I should pay more. It sounds weird to say that because I start to get into like old thinking of like cult models and trying to just elevate somebody past the thing. Fundamentally, if it's the right environment with the right values and they're helping you grow on all their ventures in your life, it is right. Like, double down, give back even more because you're fueling more of that. You're doubling your commitment to the process. So yeah, this all comes into this spiritual fitness idea. You're capable of incurring even more of a financial expense because you're even more resilient. You're even more capable of doing more things. But you have to remove, as you said before, salt shaker back in the middle. You have to go again. You have to choose for enough pain to say, that salt shaker's back in the middle. Here it is. This is the same thing. So
Now, the big thing that would help with this, if people have their own personal values and maybe their own personal mission or mission statement, right? So how many values should a person have? And how did they determine what their values are? Like, how do I even, like, if I want to sit down on a piece of paper, like, what are my values? And then how does someone develop their own personal mission statement?
great question. I'll start with the mission statement. Purpose, what I've come to learn, Simon Sinek talks a lot about start with why. I've learned that that's not a real statement because you have to first get enough life experience to test yourself. When you go into the self-actualization, it's how do I get to the point where I know what my why is? Purpose is what's the word? It's an emergent property. It comes from the work. It will reveal itself. Like I just had it one day in my head. I was like, that's what I'm doing. This is obvious. Like spiritual fitness came out of nowhere one day. I was talking with a conversation with my buddy Ian. It just showed up. My other mission statements just showed up.
So
So
what is your mission statement?
I'll start with the vision statement. Vision statement to me is
Oh,
world.
there's two statements.
Vision is the why. Mission is kind of the practical what we're doing to get us there. So the why is world inner peace. And I define inner peace as knowing yourself, to know thyself. Where to me, world inner peace is everybody in the world knows themselves. When you truly know yourself and you're good on you, you don't fight anybody. You know how to have discourse, you know how to align your values, but solve the internal battle, you'll find the external battle much better. So when you know who you are, you're going to be good. How do we get there? So the mission statement of Naked Sunday Studios and Caleb Nelson's mission statement is creating generational health through holistic lifestyle transformation. That helped me because the holistic lifestyle is how do I align your work, your relationships, and your physical health practices. So I've had to do business consulting and coaching, relationship coaching and consulting, and health coaching and consulting.
So
And
it doesn't have to be like a paragraph,
no,
like
well, it should.
it's a sentence. It's one thing.
Not only that, I don't use the word should very often. It should be. If you can't say it in a few words, if you have a long paragraph, maybe 1% of the people you're leading are going to remember it. Maybe. Maybe. That's why coaching cues are so powerful. Chest up. You didn't say, well, use your erectors and then pull your shoulders back this way. Like you didn't give like 10 different things. You said chest up because it right to the point. That's why you want to go with it. And it took me a long time. My mission statement started out like paragraphs long and I just started whittling away and whittling away and whittling away. And that came from a lot of journaling of like, what do I care about? What are my stories? What are the things I care? Like, what are the things that keep showing up?
Interesting. So I've been thinking, like, since the beginning, I've been thinking about, like, okay, I gotta have like this four or five sentences for, because you look up, like, we did this at Albany CrossFit. Remember when we were developing the Albany CrossFit mission statement,
Yep.
and everybody Googled mission statement on their laptops, and there were instructions on how to form one.
Yep.
I guess mine would be, this was my motto for myself last year, but I've continued it this year. And the one that keeps popping in my head is that the my mission statement would be, the creator of the heavens and the earth calls me his. So the way I live my life is to, I guess the why would be, I want to live my life in a way that glorifies God, and
Love it.
points to him. I don't wear this because it's fancy jewelry. I wear it because I believe in it. So I guess that would be my vision statement and my, oh no, that would be my mission statement and my vision statement, right?
Yeah. Yeah. How am I going to say this? So I use world inner peace as a secular way to say everybody connects to God. In
Mhm.
fact, it's the first time I've said it on any recording anywhere.
Hey, right here on the Barbell Strikes Back. First time.
James, I got to say this to you. You're somebody I've deeply valued in my life, even though we haven't talked in a bit. Like, I've been following from afar. I really respect a lot of the journey you've been on just from what I've
Oh,
observed.
thank you.
Um, and as somebody who struggled and grappled with spirituality, Naked Sunday was a journey back to my individual relationship with God, devoid of whatever church that anybody wants to ascribe to. Inner peace, to know thyself. I believe that I believe God resides right within all of us. That little voice is a spiritual thing. And people can use universe, the self, identity, God, whatever you want to call it. The more you come to that peace and when I say peace, like you're in a good relationship with that. That's my belief of what is within us. So that's my secular version. Go figure. Look at this. We're talking
Yeah.
about it. We both align. Not too different.
Yeah. And it's okay. You can align with different words, different sentences, different everything, but you have to dive deeper to find out if you align.
Exactly. But notice the more you're at peace with yours, the more you're okay with me saying different words, but be like, oh, I see how that's kind of the same. And vice versa. Your shade is different than mine, but that's okay because I know that we align. I fundamentally believe we all are looking for that deeper relationship with something bigger than ourselves.
It's a nice guiding light on how you're going to live your life. And I know, I mean, early in my younger life, I'm only 37, but, like early life, I was really into, the church and the Bible and all that stuff. And then as you become a teenager and you're in your 20s in college and you're trying to figure out life, that starts to slide by the wayside. And I used to actually wear a necklace, if you remember when you first met me, that had a cross on it. And I actually lost it at Albany CrossFit. I left it hanging on a pull-up bar one day, and when I came back, it was gone. Someone else needed it more than I did, and then I just never got around to getting another one. And, faith wasn't a priority in my life. It was kind of on the back burner. And then now in older life, I've reconnected with it, and I'm like, I don't know why I ever stopped doing this to begin with, and now, during my, developmental years, I guess you could say, maybe I'd be driving down the road and someone cuts you off and like, you say your expletives and you're all upset about it. But now when I drive around, I'm super chill all the time. And the way I imagine it is if would I say those things if Jesus was in the passenger side seat with me right now? No, I wouldn't, so you try to act like that all the time. Like what if, like, someone was there that you would want to say those things to. And it doesn't have to be, God. It could be your grandma. If your grandma was in the car, would you say that? Or if any of those things.
You're speaking to personal accountability and a personal relationship. It's so much different. That's why I keep bringing up in coaching. It's like, are you showing up for coaching because you want to be here and you're committed to the long-term thing? Or are you showing up here for the surface level result? If you're showing up for the surface, like, and that's all you want, this ain't the spot. Like, because it's not going to last. Because if you're not willing to say, I'm going to exhibit these values everywhere I go, and I can visualize pretending like, well, what if my kid was sitting here in the car? Or what if it was Jesus? Or what if it was Gandhi? Or what if it was name the person that you care who would judge you or be like, that's not in alignment. The best version, or better yet, the best version of you is sitting next to you.
Yeah. And well, it's for you soon, you will have a little kid, a little impressionable mind and moldable person literally in the back seat, watching everything you do. And they're going to be a sponge. They're going to become a little Caleb. So if you're an angry guy, they might have issues. If you stamp your feet and deal with challenges in not the best way, you're literally teaching them how to do that.
Exactly. And that's where this generational health came into play. Because to me, understanding this world inner peace is not going to happen in one generation. There's not a shot in hell that I am going to solve that. The goal is to set the wheels in motion and to hand these lessons that I've done off to the next generation, my kids, my community, other coaches, other whomever. That's why I'm talking about it. because it's not about me. What I've learned in this exploration, and I've specifically looked to describe it in a secular, non-secular way, non-religious way, more of a kind of common speak language, is because then it's adaptable to any doctrine that somebody ascribes to. And I want you to plug it into your own language and your own background and your own thing, because everybody needs to find their way to that.
Yeah, and
And
it's like you can't save everybody, you can't help everybody, but it's like you can save as many souls as possible in
yeah,
just your circumference. Like Jesus says in the Bible, I send you out to be fishers of men. But he doesn't mean like you're not gonna be able to fish the whole ocean, but you can affect. If you affect 10 people, you affect 10 people. If it's 100, it's 100. Some people have a bigger audience and they can do millions of people. And there's people who have a big audience that don't do anything for anybody at all. So
exactly. And
yeah.
that's where I think like this is my path to how I came to have a better relationship with myself and God, my version of it. And that's me. And I'm good on me with that. Here's some tools. I hope that it benefits, if not millions, but at least one person, because at least they can start from a better place than I did. That's the simple hope of it. So that, okay, now communally, we know how to all speak each other's language. Like I can talk to people from, I've made friends with every person, every religion. I don't care. Like that doesn't, I'm just curious. And go figure, like people with different nutritional backgrounds, they treat it like a religion. With different business backgrounds, they treat it like a religion. They're all religions. People are so good.
So it's almost like nutrition is more religion than religion.
Oh,
It
well,
gets crazy.
Glassman said it once, like trying to change their diet is like trying to change their religion, because it is.
Yeah, it's
Because
like if you want to upset someone to have a conversation about religion, nutrition, or politics, it's like it's sure to become contentious really, really quick.
every time. So, thinking about it that way, this came from first me defining my core values, as we had mentioned before. The core values first got me in alignment in my lifestyle. And I left space for the things that like energetically aligned. And then I was able to hear the language of other people and pick that stuff out and go, oh, okay. And then I started to put it into one cohesive message. And then I started to think about what was my method to get here. And then I was able to write it down. And then I've worked on my book. And that's at some point I'll come back on the podcast to try to promote that. Like
Yeah, definitely.
the point is, by first defining my values, I knew where I was at. This is the starting point. If you don't know where you're at, you're just running directions, man. You got to first get solid in the ground beneath you, and you have to build home within you. Like these are the things, the foundation that I stand behind. And I developed what I call the anti-value method. So you asked, how do you do it? I recommend getting 5 core values. To me, it somehow I have a thing with the number 5, but also it resonates with you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Anti-value is super simple. Anti-value method is super simple. Start with step 1. What do you hate? What drives you up the wall? For me, it started with like weird things like poor table manners or not holding the door for people, being rude. Deeper things were like not valuing my time, saying certain things to me, not respecting, whatever. So what that all symbolized, you're going to get a lot of things and you're like, okay, what is the universal thing underneath that? What's the one word that encapsulates how you felt about all those things? So for me, I was like, all those things are disrespect, whether to themselves or to me. Oh, okay. So my anti-value is disrespect. Why this is important. You ask somebody, hey, what do you like? What do you care about? What do you want? You've asked this before. So what do you want? Most people, before they will give you a straight answer what they want, they will tell you 25 things that they know they don't want. That's a waste of time.
Yeah.
But you tell
It's
somebody,
it's kind of like someone joins the gym and they're like, I just want to get stronger. I hate cardio. I hate sweating. All this. I don't want to do the burpees. Yeah, all that stuff.
exactly. I don't want to do all these things. Cool. So you don't want to do anything. All right. So you don't want the result, huh? We have evolved to perceive threats emotionally or physically or otherwise. So when somebody finds something they don't like, it sticks out like a sore thumb. I'm sure you thought of 5 things right as I said that. There's always a theme. So you find that theme. Now I have disrespect. Okay, so disrespect was my anti-value. My core value is the exact opposite, respect. Here's some fun. Like now I can't unsee it. I can't unknow that my core value is that. But what most people want to do is they want to go run and be like, everybody else is disrespecting me. It's all their fault. It's all their thing. They're bothering me. Blah, 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 blah. They need to respect me. Nope. You need to say, where am I not respecting others and not respecting myself in all aspects of my life, in my health, in my relationships, and in my work?
And those are the burnt out areas right there.
All of them, they're there. Exactly. Once you see those things, the important part is you actually have control of how you show up. You can't control other people. You can't control how other people respond. You can control how you decide to show up and arrive, which is empowering because you can start to change your behaviors. And slowly but surely, you start to check all these things off the list. Oh, I'm respecting my body. I'm respecting my relationships. I'm respecting my work. I'm respecting myself in those things. What I've found is in the beginning, you're only going to be able to see one value or anti-value at a time. When you start to clean up one, all of a sudden a new thing is going to really piss you off because you're ready to see it. It's like the person's like, my knees are hurting. Cool. Their knees clear up. Oh man, why is my back killing me? Well, it was hurting you beforehand, but the knee was the thing that was screaming louder. It's that kind of thing. And then you go down the line of holding yourself to that next one and the next one. I mean, it might take you a year. It might take you an entire year just to define your core values. You will get better along the way. Don't get me wrong, with all the things, because the foundation is starting to get solid.
Yeah, and you got to practice.
You got to practice. You'll have your foundational thing, and then you continue. Like you, after that, you just every quarter reassess. How am I doing with all my core values? Oh, I feel a little off. Where do I need to put my attention? You do that enough times, all of a sudden, the right people start coming into your life. You start attracting the right conversations. You start showing up in authenticity because that's you, who you are. You're the authentic core values. The people you need to serve, the language you need to use, it's all going to start to show up. And if you're journaling this, all of a sudden you're going to start to see common themes. And start with like, what's the big problem I want to solve? If I was to die tomorrow, what would I hope everything keeps going? Not only that, what would I do for the rest of my life just because I enjoy it? Because I believe in it. That is where the emergent property shows up. It just shows up one day. The more you continue to sit with it, you'll refine it and refine it and refine it. I mean, better part of 4 years to sit and clearly define my mission and vision statement. That's a long time. Or it's a short time if you look at the span of my life. So,
and it's worth it. It's worth the time investment. Well, I mean, you could spend a lot of time, developing your fake character in a virtual world, or you could develop your real character in the real world.
In the real world. And that's the key, because you actually, when you do this, so to give anybody scope on what happens on the other side, and we talked about the Empowered Leader Project, people are like, oh, that sounds all nice and good and cool. Like I have a vision, and I know my core, I know who I am. And some people think that that's too woo-woo. The practical things that come from this, you have a better work-life balance. There's the thumbs up again, which is really life balance. You know how to organize your life in a way that you get to do the things that fulfill you with the people you love. You have deeper connections. You actually enjoy the time you spend with people. You have better health. You're a better communicator. So that means you're also a more effective leader. Guess what that leads to? More money. You have more time, more energy, more money, and better relationships. And you look better naked. Like, awesome. Those are
Who doesn't want that?
Who doesn't want that? But the kicker is you do that. Like there's plenty of people who look great. They have the Barbie wife, the arm candy, and $1 million in the bank account, and they hate themselves. You can achieve your version of wealth, health, and connection while still loving yourself. The important reason why that's important is because it's sustainable. You'll keep showing up to be up with you, be with you. You keep showing up for you all the time. How do you beat that? You're not in conflict with yourself. That's the reason why when you achieve success, you keep it. You're not the lottery winner who goes broke 3 years later. You're not the person who gets a divorce after a year of whatever. You're not the person who wins the 90-day challenge and puts all the weight back on. You lose it and keep it off. And then you start to build upon that cool foundation. You don't even know where you go. You start climbing towards your potential.
It's funny how many people get hung up on, the superficial goal, of like what you just described. You've got the beautiful wife, you've got $1 million in the bank account, you've got washboard abs, but you hate yourself, and you're really not happy. And you see it play out in movies, but also in the news and everything on, like, there's so many warnings. Like, it's funny how we don't heed warnings when they're said to us, because we can't look past the fun things, but the person telling you is like, look, it really wasn't fun being a rock star. I had a terrible life, terrible relationships. I destroyed my body. It wasn't worth the praise that I got, and that's biblical too. There's an example of in the Bible of a man who he's in hell, and he wants the message given to his brother, I think, to like, hey, don't do this, don't do what I did to get here, because this sucks. I was rich, I was famous, I was all these things, but I did not follow God. I didn't do any of that stuff, and now here I am. And all I want now is, I don't want to get out of this. This is what I did. I just don't want my family to follow in my footsteps on the example that I set for them.
Yeah.
And it's, but people don't heed warnings, and the warnings are there a million times over.
Well, that's all the more reason why I like to tell it. Like, here's the signs of burnout, and here's all the places they show up, because they're sneaky, man. And most people want to avoid it.
And
But
most people think about burnout as just being stressed.
yeah, it's not that at all. It's all those things. That's why I love it. I love that you just said that. People don't, and I thought it was that, right? In performance training, like for sports, they call it overtraining. Different word, same concept.
Yeah.
The
And a lot of people say that doesn't even really exist. You're not overtrained. You're all these other things.
you're under recovering. That's the
Yeah.
thing. It's not how hard you train, it's how well you recover. You're putting all this input into your life, but you made no space to absorb that stress. Burnout's a different word. Like I said, burnout exists, but it doesn't exist. It's the same thing.
Yeah. You need a shock absorber. You're just getting all the impact.
Yeah, dude. You'll love this part in Ted Lasso. It's a bit of a joke, but like he's talking about his method he's developing. Spoiler a little bit, but still worth. You might forget it by the time, but it's like
Yeah. I'm still going to watch it. I'm
it
going to watch it eventually.
becomes this 4-part thing, and they get through the first like 3 pillars, and they get to the 4th one, like leave space, and they're like, for what? And somebody makes it like, wait, for God to walk in. I was like, when I heard that, I was like, as much as they're making kind of a joke right now, it's like, yeah, you're making space for the unknown. You're making space for the unknown, and God or spirituality or whatever, like that's belief. We all don't know what happens after we die. We don't know what's going to happen when we take the next step. We don't know when we're going to die. We don't know what calamities or successes come our way. That's faith.
And there's no sense on getting worked up over it. Like, like I hear, like, I don't, jokes on religion or Jesus or God don't offend me at all, because the way that I look at it is that, for example, Louis C.K.,
Yeah.
right? Big comedian, did a concert or a show at Madison Square Garden, and during it he read from the Bible, and he had a bunch of Jesus jokes.
Yeah.
But he's on stage and recorded holding the Bible. So how many people are going to see that? And like, I guarantee you, at least one person of the millions of people who saw it or were in attendance said, let me go read that story myself to see what he's talking about. And then now they're sucked in. Like, so it's like at least he's talking about it, and they weren't horribly offensive. It's just like it's I've read things and been like, this is kind of funny, and you can see where the humor comes from. God invented humor, so it's like I look at it at a different way. It's like he just exposed so many people to even what that book looks like. He's holding a leather-bound black book with a giant gold cross on it in Madison Square Garden in front of all those people and in front of all the people that are going to download the live stream. I think when I was watching the live stream, there were like millions of people watching it. You could see the little ticker going up.
Yeah.
And they all heard him say the story that he thought was funny. And I guarantee you, some people are like, let me read another story and whatnot. And then you don't know what could happen. And to say that like that's not part of like God's will, it's like, yeah, that's where he caught you. Like, gotcha. You want watch a comedy show, and I'm here too.
Well, you've heard that thing like you want to find out who's in power, who's in control. Notice control, that's not true love. Because you like if you love it, let it go kind of concept.
Yeah,
If you're truly confident in yourself, you don't care if somebody makes fun of it. You're okay.
yeah.
I'm good either way. And you can laugh at yourself. There's confidence in that. And comedians have a beautiful gift about talking about uncomfortable subjects and getting you to think about it.
And they don't feel that way, most of them, on what they're saying. They're just saying it.
They're not trying to sell you on one way or another. The better thing is the most powerful thing you can do is essentially it's Inception, right? You've watched that movie. The idea of Inception is to drop an idea so deep in somebody's consciousness that it changes everything. That's why ideas are the most powerful things in the world. When you can laugh at something, it's not threatening. When it's silly, it's not threatening. You can drop it. So this whole like make something fun, there's like deep psychological and emotional stuff that's wrapped into that. When it's fun, it's palatable. It's
Yeah.
much better than saying like, oh, I'm gonna have this gross medicine, as opposed to like, wow, we put some sugar on it and like I'm gonna have my medicine tonight. Like that kind of idea. A spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down.
And it also says in the Bible, vengeance is the Lord's, like people who say things and whatnot. It's like he's going to deal with that. That's not my job. My job is to love people, and to point in his direction and glorify his name. So it's like I don't need to worry about that. I don't need to get bent out of shape. I'm just happy that he had that book out in front of so many people.
Exactly. You see the difference there. Like somebody who's not secure in their belief, who's not looking to develop their own, take ownership of their own relationship, and is really like what you often find is people are trying to like Bible thump or preach their thing and dogmatically. It's like you're not actually don't take ownership of it. You care more about the people around you approving of you following the doctrine as opposed to, well, what do I think about it? How do I show up with these things? It's different when you take ownership of it for yourself as opposed to the dogma control. I got pushed into the matrix of this religious system. That's the difference. And
Yeah.
look at the
And that's a good
relationship.
way to scare people away when you thump it. That what you're saying right now is biblical too.
Yeah.
On it, keep your good works to yourself.
Mhm.
If you help someone in a like you gave someone $20 who was one of your clients or something, and you go around, you film yourself on social media giving the person the $20. Look at how awesome I am. That's worthless. Like God sees the good deeds that you do, and not that your good works will do you any good, in the long run, but you don't need to be flashy about it. You don't need to, those videos of like the people feeding the homeless, but it's like they have a camera crew with them.
Yeah, he staged it. And like, in
Yeah,
fact, I think you made that person look smaller compared to you. Like you're trying to look benevolent as opposed to just being benevolent. Like,
yeah.
be kind. Just be kind. Like you could have just bought somebody a cup of coffee and never said two things about it. It was for the joy of loving somebody as opposed to so I can get all this street cred and everybody knows how generous I am.
Likes on your Instagram post or whatever it is.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Sometimes, like if you're doing a charity benefit as a business, like yeah, sometimes you got to talk about it. You got to promote it and you got to let people know.
Yeah, I'm
Those
talking more those little moments,
the little
like
moments, like is this the quality of your character? Is this how you show up even when the cameras are off? If that's not you, you're not in alignment with your core values. sometimes you will have a big story show up. And that's also okay. Cause I think that's the other side that people need to be okay with. I
Yeah.
know I struggle with that. Sometimes you got to talk about it, but that's not every day.
And sometimes it might just come up in conversation. You're like, oh, actually, I had this experience where, this guy was on the side of the road. I picked him up and we've been friends ever since, like I really helped him out or I saved him. It was a snowstorm and he was going to die out there. Like that's not something you need to shout to the roof when it happens, but things come up in conversation as you discuss your life eventually.
Yeah, that's just different. And not only that, people who will ask you something about that, they also already know that about your character. And they also wanted to welcome they're like, wow, so like there's another way that you're showing up in the world. Sounds about on par for who this person is. So, dude, I did not expect our conversation to go this direction, but I'm so glad it did. This is incredible. This is
Oh
incredible.
yeah.
If I haven't told you again, I love you, but like love you. This has been
No, I'm happy we've reconnected again. We've reconnected a couple times.
but I
But
feel like
we're hitting a lot of good topics here.
well, this to me, like this is a sign of like where I really appreciate about our friendship. I feel like it goes deeper every time. And to me, that's a sign of like real connection, not forcing something, letting it grow, evolving. Like it's fun. Like,
Yeah, and I can see your personal growth from like from episode 22, the other times that we've talked, throughout COVID and stuff, and then even right now.
thanks, man. Appreciate that. Like, and right back at you. I didn't even realize like 3 hours just went by. And I felt
Yeah, yeah.
like we
This
just had
is
a conversation.
Well, hey, this is episode 1 of season 3, and this will also be the first episode I'm going to put on YouTube. If I
Ooh.
think it was on your podcast where I mentioned that I had a goal for that next year that I was going to start putting the video on YouTube,
Yeah.
and then I never got around to it, and then I was like, I talked myself out of it because that was outside of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
But now I'm trying to level it up and put put my not only my voice out there but my face out there saying the things that I'm saying. So this will be the first one going on the old YouTube channel.
Wow. I feel very privileged to be part of that experience, man. This is incredible.
Yeah, season 3.
Dude. Sorry I just took that like left turn there. I didn't know where we were going, but I was like,
No, 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 that's fine.
yeah, this has been incredible. But
Yeah.
thank you for
Yeah,
having
I
me. It's like you've challenged me in this conversation to talk a little bit more about this deeper spiritual element that, real talk, I was just like you were just being vulnerable a second ago. So I believe you deserved the same thing in return. Like I was scared to talk about this stuff for fear, like, who's this dude who's going to be like, there's always this kind of concept in the back of my mind, like you can only be this thing. Like you can either be an athlete or a brainiac or this. Like, why can't I be all of it? Like I can be spiritual.
yeah.
Can be loving. I can be tender. I can be very masculine. I can be
Wear your
very,
heart on your sleeve,
yeah.
I'll give you an example. The day 2 of the New York State Championships this past year,
Hmm.
I instead of wearing my button up with my tie and everything, I try to go more casual day 2. And I had a t-shirt that I ordered that says strong on the chest of it,
Yeah.
and the T is a giant cross.
Oh,
So, and I'm the president of the organization, a lot of eyes on me. I'm coaching, I'm volunteering, I'm doing a lot of things. And I've wanted to wear this shirt somewhere. Like I've had it for a while, but I don't wear it at the gym because I wear my coaching shirt at the gym.
yeah.
And so I haven't had an opportunity to wear it somewhere. And I'm like, I'm gonna wear it here because like it kind of fits. It's weightlifting, it says strong.
Yeah.
And what I noticed was the way a lot of people interacted with me was different when they saw a giant cross on my chest.
Yeah.
A lot of people that I don't think would have wanted to talk about God or anything like were all of a sudden talking to me about it and they were excited.
Yeah.
And the way they interacted with me, or even just maybe maybe they have things like that too that they don't want to wear in certain situations or things like that. And hopefully that would make them more comfortable to do the same,
Yeah.
to be like, hey, put that shirt on and wear it out there and see what someone says, so yeah, that's just what this reminded me of, like you can put yourself out there and get out of your comfort zone and hopefully it will help someone else do the same.
You can be a magnet for change just by being yourself. It's kind of wild.
Yeah, oh,
God,
yeah.
dude, thank you for having me on today, man. This has been a
Yeah,
really,
thank you for coming on.
yeah, this has been, thank you for letting me talk a little about this empowered leader thing. This has been, that was something I'd been scared for a long time. Like this idea of leading leaders is scary because, like, well, what are the expectations of that? What does that mean I have to be? Well, I have to be myself. Ooh, what's that? So those are the things, like just being able to share this with you and my evolution, man. It's been, I'm just so grateful for you holding space for this. Like it's been a real treat. Thank you.
Oh yeah, this has been fun. I'm glad you reached out. You shot me a text like what, 2 weeks ago or a week ago.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and
I was just scrolling through my stories. I was like, James, oh, I haven't, when was the last time I talked about it? I gotta
yeah,
talk.
we started talking. You told me about the Empowered Leadership Project, all that stuff. I was telling you about the stuff I was doing. I'm like, hey, let's dive deeper. Let's get on the on the podcast, you know. And it's like the thing I love about podcasts is like, of course, we could have just like called each other on the phone and had a 3 hour conversation,
Yeah.
but then it would have only helped us.
Yeah.
So by putting this out into the world, hopefully one thing that either one of us said helps someone in some small way, you know, and there you go.
Dude, I love that. That's, I think that podcasts are done that are done this way, where it's like, let's just push record on our conversation, let it go where it goes. People like there's authentic, you can't fake 3 hours of a conversation. You can't. So many people try to jam it into like, here's my 10-minute pitch. Get out of here. Like people are not buying your product. They're buying the person behind the product. They're buying your values. They're buying the relationship, especially if it's a service-based thing. We just talked about you're paying for a friend. Well, here's your chance to get to know that person before you go jumping into bed, quote unquote. Yeah, whatever that means.
Yeah.
Uh, it's
And if you
just
want to be a effective leader, you have to put yourself out there before other people will put themselves out there when you ask them to, you know?
thousand
So it's
percent.
like, you know, if we just have a private conversation, then, you know, we're not sharing anything. We're not showing that we're walking the walk, you know, things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Wow. Dude, I was already
Cool.
excited
Well,
about this, but this has been to the moon, to the moon.
so Caleb, well, let's put a nice ribbon on it here. What
Yeah.
where can people sign up for the Empowered Leader Project? Where can they follow you? Where can they listen to Naked Sunday? Let's go through the list.
Let's go through the list. Uh, so you can follow at Naked Sunday Studios on what's it, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook, all that, and on YouTube. So I have the podcast on YouTube as well on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. But for whatever reason, my Spotify has been a little funky and has not been uploading things the way I want. So all the recent stuff has been on YouTube. I'm fixing
Check the
that.
RSS feed. Just
Check
an
the RSS.
aside.
There you go. But if you want to get, I mean, I treat business like dating. Like, let's first have coffee together. So I call them, it's a discovery call. If you want to learn a little more about the Empowered Leader Project, just go to nakedsundaystudios.com. It's a little landing page there that basically points you eventually to a calendar. You'll see a video of me with my dog. I'll talk a little bit more about it. You'll see the signs and symptoms, some FAQs, be straight up. But ultimately, hey, let's just have a chat. I might be the right fit, but I also might not be. And if I'm not, I have plenty of a network to help people with, which sounds like a really terrible way of selling myself, like already trying to push other people like to somewhere else, but
You're
whatever.
gonna go into the Rolodex. Remember when you had one of those?
Dude, my phone is my Rolodex nowadays. As much as I don't like to be on my phone, it's like, all right, who's in my, when you've been coaching this long in the same region, like you meet a lot of people. Um, but it brings me more joy to find the right fit. But if somebody does want to go on this journey, ultimately to if you're feeling those signs and symptoms, but what I should even also say this, what brings me even more joy, and I think most people don't think about this, the best time to get a coach is when you don't think you need one, when things are good. That's the time when you can make the most progress. That's the preventative health. You will spend a boatload less money on stuff. So if you just got out of a thing where you're feeling stressed out, like you can also get a coach. And if nothing else, it will help you from prevent you from going backwards, which a lot of people do. They dig themselves a new hole because they don't know where else they're going. Um, so if you felt those things ever, I would love to just have a conversation. There's nothing that lights me up more than helping people like feel good, feel more connected with themselves, their relationships, but also like, man, when you can start to build a business or fulfill your role in whatever leadership role from like authenticity, and you can start to tap into impact, my like this the hair on my arms start to pop up because I'm like so excited. It's like it brings me so much joy to see people buy into themselves. So Naked
That's how
Sunday
you know
Studio,
when you're in the right business, when you're excited to help people. Like if you're in the service industry in some walk of life, when you're just excited to work with people and you have that feeling.
yeah. Yeah, it really brings me a lot of deep joy to do this stuff. And I've realized it's really hard. This kind of job is very hard and you have to be very patient. Um, but all great things in this life are worth being patient for and slowing down and taking the time to do it right. And the things I see on the other side, man, the connection I have with people, the joy that we get to experience, the highs and lows we get to go through together, like the resilience I witness in people, there's really honestly, there's not even really amount of money that you could put a price tag on for that. Like it's incredibly powerful. So yeah, if somebody wants to go on that journey into a better version of yourself, my little tagline is look better naked inside and out. Um,
Ooh, I like that.
you like that? There you go.
That's a t-shirt too. There you go.
That's it.
Put that on a t-shirt.
I'm working on that one still as well. I got a apparel line I got to work on too, but yeah, if they want that, go to nakedsundaystudios.com and let's have a chat. We'll do that.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Well, Caleb, again, thank you for coming on. We'll have to do it again. Maybe we'll jump over to yours and do a round two over there. Everybody check out nakedstudios.com. Hire Caleb. He's going to help you get to that next level and avoid burnout and just you'll get to interact with a good human being. How about that? The sometimes you don't realize it, and sometimes we don't have it. So Caleb is there for you. Thank you so much for listening. You can follow the show at The Barbell Strikes Back on Instagram, although I'm horrible about posting things on there. And you can follow me at James A. McDermott, which you'll see a lot of Godzilla content and random music and all kinds of things that, don't pertain to training at all. And that's it. So thank you so much for listening. Caleb, thank you again for coming on.
Thank you, brother.